some bling and some boom yesterday up in Ogden because America. Great to be here. That young man is Porter Larson. He's producing the program today. We're jam-packed on a Wednesday. Love Wednesdays during football season. On this show, it's kind of when we turn the page to look ahead and leave the weekend that was behind us. Pro football in the NFL. Week 3 gets rolling tomorrow with the Patriots and the Jets from MetLife in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Aaron Rodgers, according to the Action Network, in a poll that was given to over 3,000 NFL fans, named the most annoying player in the NFL today. Can't say I disagree. I am a Jets fan. Jets are a 6-point favorite tomorrow night. It's not a line you're used to seeing, historically speaking, when the Patriots and the Jets play. A lot of really kind of sneaky big games early on. Maybe the biggest game of the weekend will be played down in Arlington, Texas. The Ravens will either be 0-3. The Cowboys will either be 1-2. A lot of injury news, unfortunately, to get to when it comes to the NFL coming up. A couple of Monday night games will finish off the slate. Jags, Bills, Commanders, Bengals. The Kansas City Chiefs are bringing in Kareem Hunt, who once upon a time was the leading rusher in pro football. They released him in 2018. We won't get into it. Look it up. Not a great look. Went to Cleveland for a while, and now he's back as Isaiah Pacheco is going to miss 6 to 8 weeks. Cooper Kupp is headed to the injured reserve. He's going to miss at least the next 4 games. Obviously, former BYU Cougar Puka Nacua is already on IR. So the Rams, Sean McVay, man, they're in a little bit of trouble. So we'll get to all the latest. The Hall of Fame nominees were announced. Is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer? I feel like the answer is yes. I think 2 Super Bowls kind of get you in. Otherwise, a up-and-down regular season situation for Eli. But we'll get to some of that on the show today. Of course, high speed ahead to the weekend for Utah football, for BYU football. You know, there is, and our guy Josh Pate, who joins the show from time to time, I know it's got a lot of attention. His take is the winner of this game essentially is in the driver's seat for the Big 12 championship. Utah goes to Stillwater. They beat OK State. When you look at some of the FPI metrics and the schedule that lies ahead, this is as big of a game as is on the slate for Week 4 in college football for the potential ramifications of what it could mean. On Friday night, we get a good game. A couple of top 25 teams. The Fighting Illini from Illinois out of the Big Ten. They travel to Lincoln, Nebraska to take on the Cornhuskers, who are 3-0. And off to a great start. Saturday night, Lavelle Edwards Stadium, Provo, Utah. K-State rolls into town to take on Brigham Young. They are a 6.5-point favorite. That line is down from 7 yesterday. So a lot of big games, landscape of college football. Southern Cal is in Ann Arbor at the Big House to take on Michigan. Big game there out of the Big Ten. First Big Ten game for USC. So the schedule lies ahead in college football. A lot of great games down in Norman, Oklahoma. Tennessee, who leads college football in total offense, the number 3 most proficient rushing team in college football, is down in Norman, Oklahoma to take on the Sooners, who are 3-0, but just barely. They're kind of paper tigers, in my opinion, but we do have a lot of great matchups in college football to get to. Media Day for the Utah Hockey Club, and kids, be prepared to spend a little money on some coolers and be prepared for the corniest mascot out. It's going to be like an abominable snowman. According to a couple of people, the folks that were down there, a couple of Clayton Keller and others may have let it slip that it will be the Utah Yetis. And I can't stand it. But that's just me. That's just me. I'm not a thief of joy. If you like it, it's you. Maybe you'll get a free cooler for the Utah Yetis. For the Utah Hockey Club, high speed ahead to preseason when they travel to take on the St. Louis Blues. Then they open up with the Chicago Blackhawks. We're going to do some hockey on the show today, in addition to a bunch of football. It's a sneaky big night. I know a lot of you are not necessarily dialed in right now to the stretch run of Major League Soccer, but our good friends over at RSL is a product that we like to cover. And RSL welcomes in Dallas tonight, and there are a bevy of MLS games that hold a lot of implications. RSL trying to hold on to one of those top 4 spots in the West to get a home playoff game. So, got a little hockey, got a little soccer, got a little NFL, a lot of college football on the show today. Good guest list for you guys. We'll start things off with one of my favorite radio hosts who was here for a minute. And when he was here, I listened to his show every day because I thought he was the best in the market. I was stunned when he left. But he landed on his feet, as I thought he would. Ian Fitzsimmons will stop by from ESPN. He's going to be in Stillwater for the Utah-Oklahoma State game, so I'll catch up with Ian today. Some pro and college football with our buddy Dalton Wasserman from Pro Football Focus. Stevenson Sylvester for his weekly conversation. My buddy Blake Murdoch will be live in studio coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. And then Belle Frazier, who's the new NHL writer for the Salt Lake Tribune. And she has landed, and she's on fire. She's tweeting a bunch. She's writing a bunch. So we'll get some takeaways from Utah Hockey Club Media Day today, or the Utah Yeti Media Day today. From Belle Frazier. All right, Ian Fitzsimmons, Dalton Wasserman, Stevenson Sylvester, Blake Murdoch, Belle Frazier, me, Spence Checketts, and that guy, pro Utah Yeti, Porter Larson, right? Weren't you down with this name?
I thought that there were several that were better, but I think my official stance once it sounded like that was going to be the name, and of course we're still awaiting official word there, was that the mascot is not for me. Right. I'm 30, almost. I'm still in my 20s, to be clear.
Well, wait, you're not. You're like 27.
I'm in my late 20s. I'm just going to.
It's not almost 30.
But anyway.
It can't be almost 30 because then I have to say into a microphone I'm almost 50. I'm not ready to do that. I'm 46.
Halfway to 90.
But it's not almost 50.
Halfway to 92?
It can't be almost 50. It's closer to 50 than 40, but I'm not ready to say that I'm almost 50 yet.
That's fair. But anyways. The mascot's not for me. It's not for you. It's for the kids who are going to grow up and end up cheering for this team and going to the games and getting the merchandise and the stuffed animals, whatever it may be. That's who the mascot's for. The game environment, the in-arena amenities, the way that they put out the product, that's for us. And, I think there's a balance we can find where even if I think the mascot's corny, because I think that is true for, frankly, probably a majority of pro sports franchises. We can debate the rest of the organization and how they operate there.
Well, I'll tell you from an organizational standpoint, they're in a great spot, and you're going to like this club. You're going to like watching it grow. They have a good young team, and they've got clean books and a lot of picks. And unlike their basketball counterparts, they actually have exciting young players that have proven themselves. So excited to have hockey in our market. All right. Ian Fitzsimmons is our first guest right out of the gates today. But before we get to Ian, courtesy of our good friends at Standard Restaurant Supply. Standard Restaurant Supply is your tailgate headquarters. Get everything you need to make your tailgate epic. Standard carries everything from serving dishes, sterno, propane, portable barbecues, and so much more. Standard Restaurant Supply is open to the public and conveniently located at 3500 Southwest Temple. And online at standardrestaurant.com. Get the best tailgate in town with Standard Restaurant Supply. It is time now for your opening tip. So we've been talking about this road trip to Stillwater for Utah football ever since the schedule came out, because I think most people who cover college football and who cover the Big 12 put Oklahoma State in a tier along with Utah to potentially win the conference, right? So schedule comes out. We knew the non-con pretty early. Then we see that coming up this Saturday, Utah travels to OK State, Stillwater. That's a 2 o'clock Mountain Time kick. It will be on Fox. You can hear the pregame coverage in the game on this station. Porter will get things rolling at about 10 o'clock. Then headed over to Bill, Sly, and Scott. And this is a massive game for a number of different reasons. So the line as of now, and it's been interesting to follow it, Utah is a 2-point favorite. Over-under is 54.5. But as I referenced earlier, Josh Pate, friend of the show, stops by as consistently as he can. He's a busy dude now as his show is blown up. His take on this, he surmises that ultimately the winner of this game, quite frankly, is in the driver's seat to win the conference. And maybe that's not necessarily a hot take, but that should probably frame the conversation about just how big this game is, because both Utah and OK State are a little bit fortunate this year with their schedule. Now, OK State's schedule, according to the Power Index, is harder than Utah's. After getting Utah home coming up on Saturday, next week they're at K-State. But their road games the rest of the way, at BYU, at Baylor, at TCU, at Colorado, very manageable. And then they get West Virginia, Arizona State, Texas Tech at home. So OK State's schedule technically is harder than Utah's. The main reason is they're on the road at K-State. And Utah, as we've talked about, has actually been the beneficiary of some scheduling stuff here because Arizona gets their breaks blown off by K-State. That's the opponent next week. At Arizona State, that could be dicey. That's a late kick on the road down there in Tempe. But I'm not sure that Arizona State, I'm impressed with what they've done. But physically, we talked about this yesterday. Of the 4 Pac-12 teams who have joined the Big 12, Utah, in my opinion, is the only team that has shown it stacks up physically with their Big 12 peers and counterparts. Arizona State, I don't think does. Arizona showed they got bullied by K-State. Colorado, rooted in substance, not in flash, right? So it's Utah that appears to be the physical counterparts and peers of their new Big 12 cohorts. So while that could be a tricky game, not that concerned about it. You get TCU at home. I do think TCU is good. On the road at Houston, they looked better last week after looking horrific. And, of course, there's the rivalry game here, BYU. At Boulder, could get a little tricky, but I don't think Utah will be all that overwhelmed by anything Colorado has. Iowa State might be the team that's better than anybody thought. They're here in Salt Lake coming up in November. The game I keep talking about on the road to finish the season at UCF, but both Utah and Oklahoma State have manageable schedules is the way I'll put it, with a couple of obviously some tenuous situations, road games, late kicks, things like that. And nobody in college football, like Georgia's not going to finish the season undefeated. They barely got out of Lexington. Carson Beck has a shoulder injury. Their schedule is a bear. Like, expecting anybody to go undefeated in college football these days, that's a tough ask no matter who you are and no matter what conference you play in. But ultimately, this Saturday carries a weight that I don't think a lot of people are necessarily talking about, with the ramifications of what happens if you win or lose. If you lose, you're not out of it. If you win, you got some clear skies and open roads ahead of you for that Big 12 championship. All right, I want to switch gears here real quick because there's a lot of conversations. Texas is the number one team in college football for the first time since 2008. And Quinn Ewers has that starting job. But Arch Manning rolls in last week and racks up like 276 yards of total O and had 5 total touchdowns. And there are a lot of conversations about what this could mean for Texas. Now, Sark has maintained that the job is Quinn Ewers, but if you're Quinn Ewers and you watch that performance, what does that say to you? And it's not the same dynamic, but I was thinking about this, juxtaposing it to what Utah has right now with Cameron number 1 and Isaac number 2, okay? And this is not a controversy. What I think it is it allows for some interesting freedom when it comes from the number 1 guy when he's under center. So there's a lot of conversation this week in the market that will Coach Ludd change up the play calling to protect Cam a little bit more. And I don't think it's necessary based off of what we saw from Isaac last Saturday in Logan. Now, my stance is clear, and it's not a hot take. For Utah to win the Big 12, Cameron Rising has to be under center all year. Am I confident that he'll be under center all year? Of course not. How can you be? The data is in. All off season, what's the conversation? Well, Cam's back. If he's healthy, it lasted a game and a half, right? So on the road this weekend, all the indications are Cameron's under center, right? But because Isaac has shown that last year's debacle is now officially behind us, what does that do for Coach Ludd? What does that do for Cam Rising as far as the freedom that maybe they can play with? Because they know that if something goes down, the number 2 has their back. Like, last year was so bad under center for so many different reasons that the idea of getting Cam back, it's like I made the joke during the offseason, when he's driving around town, I want to see him in the Pope Mobile. You know, put him in saran wrap, put him on ice, make sure he's good to go. The problem with that mentality is, as a football player, you cannot play scared to get hurt. And certainly not somebody as aggressive as Cameron Rising. So all the conversation about, hey, you know, can we get him to do this or that? Can we be safer? Get it out of bounds. Live to play another day. Discretion is the better part of valor. All of that stuff for me was just window dressing, because when Cam gets under center, he's just going to play the way Cam plays. Now, will Andy Ludwig decide to be a little bit more conservative with the play calling to protect him? I don't know. Maybe that's an idea out there. But Steve Sarkisian, just like Coach Ludd, excellent game planner, excellent play caller. There are smart college football people that believe Sark is the best in the business when it comes to formulating an offense. And his whole take on this situation this week has been like, no, the fact that Arch is ready means that we can allow Quinn to be a little bit freer and kind of play the way he plays, because we know that we're good. If something happens to Quinn, we've got Arch standing by. And I have to wonder if there's kind of that mentality and feeling in the Utah coach's office right now, like, okay, we know that we've got a kid behind Cameron that is capable. He's not Cam Rising. This is not a whole, like, should Isaac play? And no, I'm not doing that. I'm just wondering what the emergence of a solid backup quarterback means for that group up there. You know, will they go the other way and be a little bit more conservative on the road against a physical team, against, you know, when it comes to Oklahoma State? Or will they allow a little bit more freedom for Cameron to be Cameron, because they know Isaac is standing by? I think it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But a big, big weekend for Utah football coming up. Big weekend for BYU football coming up as well. Kind of like this weekend, the way it's playing out, because these two teams are not playing concurrently. It's not the same window. So after Utah, Utah, Oklahoma State, and Stillwater, K-State rolls into Provo for an 8:30 kick on ESPN. And this line has moved the way of the Cougars, -6.5. The over-under is 48.5. BYU has shown the ability so far defensively to match up with the physicality of the teams they played so far, but the teams they played so far it's not anything like the team they're going to play on Saturday night. Southern Illinois, SMU, Wyoming. BYU survives non-con clean. I said prior to the start of the season I thought they had to do that to go bowling. And they win on Saturday. I view that as gravy. They win on Saturday. They're probably ranked in the top 25. They're 4-0 going to Baylor. Then they get Arizona at home before getting Oklahoma State in Provo at UCF. Man, the next few weeks for BYU are a bear. After at UCF, guess what it is? It's at Utah. Then it's home against Kansas. Then the road against Arizona State. So I view this game for BYU more or less as gravy. It'd be nice to get it. K-State is 6.5-point favorite on the road in Provo, but a big, big weekend for our two Big 12 teams in state after surviving non-con clean. Both BYU and Utah have big games coming up this weekend. All right, coming up on the other side, more college football. One of my favorites is Ian Fitzsimmons on a Wednesday afternoon. All right, massive game. As we've been talking about, we've had this date on Saturday circled on our calendar for a number of weeks. Both teams have stayed clean, two undefeated teams in the top 14. It's Utah at OK State. Our next guest will be there on the ground, and he's one of my favorites, man. It's been too long from ESPN Radio, the great Ian Fitzsimmons on a Wednesday. Ian, happy Wednesday, man. How we doing?
Spence, good to talk to you again, man. How you been, Paul? How you been?
Been good. Can't complain. Can't complain. Love it. Love this time of year. And so far, both these two teams have stayed clean. Before we get to the actual game, I wonder, from your vantage point, what you make of the start of the season, just from a macro standpoint of the Utes. Now, we'll learn more about them, but they have stayed clean despite some injuries, including an injury to Cam. So at 3-0, what do you make of these Utah Utes?
Well, and to be able to come away with wins, down at Baylor after Cam gets hurt, hitting that Gatorade bottle, which luckily it wasn't worse. It was just a slight laceration to his hand. But you did lose Carini Reed, who I love that dude, man. He's a sideline-to-sideline backer and one of your leaders. So that stung. But walking, Johnny Hill down from linebacker, who's been there waiting to get on the field, for the former safety. I thought that was a brilliant move by Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley because he's an athletic guy, and you can't coach speed. And, man, when you come into the Big 12, you got to be able to carry a tight end up the seam, bigger slot receivers at times. So, walking him down from safety to linebacker I thought was a brilliant move. I know they're really high on him. But bottom line is, it's a different team when Cam Rising is a quarterback. I mean, I'm not breaking news here on the Wasatch Front. I mean, all of college football knows that. I mean, when I talked to Kyle Whittingham yesterday, I flat out asked him, forget $1, if you had a quarter for every time you've been asked about Cam Rising the last year and a half, you're already in a pretty darn good tax bracket. Where would you be even after that if we just gave you a quarter every time you were asked? And he kind of laughed about it. But, all of college football knows what that guy means to this football team. And we all know also, I don't care if it's big boy high school football, college football, or the NFL. If you ain't got a quarterback, you ain't got a shot. And that's a dude who led Utah to back-to-back Pac-12 titles. I'm a huge Cam Rising fan. I think he's going to be, if he wants to, he's so cerebral. One thing Whit mentioned yesterday, he sees the game like a coach, like he's almost watching the All-22. And if he wants to coach one day, I think he's going to be an outstanding coach. He is a leader of leaders. So, and you're going to need it, man, because Spence, I don't know if you've ever been to Stillwater, but man, when they start slapping those damn paddles against the side wall right there on the sideline, it is deafening. And I do mean deafening. It is a rough place to go play. They've got 7 guys back on the defensive side of the ball that started all 14 games last year on a 10-win team that played for a Big 12 title. You've got the entire offensive line back. Alan Bowman, their quarterback, is as old as Cam Rising. And they have the college football's leading rusher from last year, Allie Gordon II, who I know has been slowed down, but teams have been walking a safety down the box on him, which has freed Bowman up to be able to complete around 68% of his passes. So you look at this matchup, man, it's 12v14. It's logo on logo. There's going to be some passion behind these pads. I cannot wait to call this thing on Saturday.
So we were discussing this earlier, Ian. I wonder what you make of what really is at stake here, because there are a lot of people talking about this game as the winner is in the driver's seat to win the conference and go to the conference championship game. I know. I'm just wondering how you would articulate what you believe is at stake coming up on Saturday.
Well, every conference game is big. You weigh them double. Nick Saban told me that years ago. Any conference game is weighed twice as much because there's twice as much on the line. But man, we're in week 4, so let's not say that one game is going to decide who's playing for a Big 12 championship or not, or who's playing in the title game. Look, Kansas State, BYU, Kansas State's really good. I mean, damn good. Avery Johnson ran Will Howard out of town, and that's a dude who won a Big 12 title a couple of years ago. I mean, he ran him to Ohio State. I mean, Avery Johnson's a heck of a quarterback. And you guys remember Matty Wells, former head coach of Utah State. He's the OC there now at Kansas State. So, the Kansas State's not a team to be taken lightly by any stretch of the imagination. Arizona is a pretty darn good football team. We go on down the list, man. I mean, so, you talk, but I picked Utah to win the Big 12 at the start of the season. I thought Kansas would be better than what we've seen so far. I love Chris Kleiman's, culture he's built there in the Little Apple in Manhattan with Kansas State. And Mike Gundy's been around for 20 years. Look at this, man. 26 days separate Mike Gundy and Kyle Whittingham, the two longest tenured head coaches in college football. I mean, let that sink in. And that's hard to do in this day and age. That you have to win consistently, and that's what they've done. So I don't believe that whoever wins Saturday is now in some kind of a driver's seat. There's too much ball left to be played.
So it's interesting. Cam will be back under center as far as everything that we've been told. I would imagine you're under the same impression. And Alan Bowman on the other side. These are two 6-7 year quarterbacks, but Ollie Gordon is the back that everybody talks about. But it does seem like OK State has more balance, right, Ian, than most people understand.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
This is not just a one-dimensional offense, yeah?
No, 100%. Purnell is a speedy wideout. He could have gone to the 2 in the draft last year. He would have been around a 6th, 7th round pick. But he's around 5'8", maybe $180, but he's a burner. He runs a sub 4.4. That's a guy you're going to have to contend with. And Alan Bowman. Think about this, Spence. The combined age of these two quarterbacks in this game at kickoff, and Cam Rising and Alan Bowman, will be 49. You know what the combined age of the two quarterbacks that started in prime time on Thursday night for the Chicago Bears and the Houston Texans is?
What is it, 42, 43?
44. 44. These two college quarterbacks are 5 years older than the combined age of the two starting quarterbacks for the Texans and the Bears. Welcome to the last COVID year of college football, right? But I don't blame any of these guys for coming back. Trey Rucker, leading tackler for the Oklahoma State Pokes. I mean, he's also a COVID guy. I mean, and keep an eye on 9, man. He'll hit you. He's another guy that would have been around a 6th, 7th round pick. So, you make some money in NIL, comes back for one more year, even though you're waiting to start your NFL cycle as far as your next contract, if you're lucky enough to get one. But he came back to improve his draft stock, and he's done that so far. So, these are two older teams, two veteran teams. As I mentioned, Oklahoma State's got 7 guys that started every single game last year on defense. The entire offensive line is back. Bowman's back. Purnell's back. Ollie Gordon II is back, who led the NCAA in rushing last year, delivered 1,700 yards. And I know he's only averaging around 3.5 yards a carry this year. Go watch what Arkansas did. They were not going to let that dude beat them. There was no way. I mean, it was, you know what? We're going to stack. We're going to walk the safety down. We're going to stack the box. Bowman, you've got to beat us. And he's been pretty good. He's completing around 68% of his passes. So, again, this is going to be strength on strength. We all know that a Kyle Whittingham coach team is going to be physical as hell. And that's why I think there's going to be a lot of passion behind the pads, man, because this is a big game, Spence. I don't want to diminish your question about driver's seat in the Big 12. I mean, this is a massive game. Like Kansas State, BYU is a massive game for all 4 of these teams when it comes to Big 12 standing. And just, it's your first conference game. You want to start on a good note. You don't want to have that taste of vinegar on your palate after the first game in conference play. But this one up in Stillwater, I'm telling you, man, this is the state of Oklahoma for that matter. The Vols are coming in to play the Sooners. You got the Utes coming in to play the Pokes. All 4 are ranked. I mean, it is going to be pandemonium, cannibalistic in the state of Oklahoma on Saturday in a great game of college football.
Well, and also, Ian, you know the deal when you do this job. You might want to rile up your listenership a little bit. So, hey, Utah wins on Saturday. We're high speed ahead of the Big 12 championship. I'm hanging the banner in Salt Lake. You know the deal.
I love it. I mean, I don't know if Portical is still out there, right? I don't know if that place is still open, go ahead and fly the flag. Oh, it's gone?
It's a courthouse now.
Myself.
Ironically enough, Portical is a courthouse now.
That's fitting. Yep. That's extraordinarily fitting.
Yep.
All right, let's just go old school. We'll go over the pass, right? We'll go to No Name Saloon. Go ahead and fly the flag, right?
There you go.
Bam, there it is. There it is. Bam, Big 12 champs. Utah, if they beat the Pokes. There you go.
There you go. We got the sound bite from Ian that we were looking for. Hey, I want to move over here.
Don't even think about it.
We're going to replay that for the next 3 weeks, just so you know. But I actually wanted to follow up on what you said about Stillwater, because I have never been there before at Boone Pickens Stadium, but we have a lot of Ute fans that will be making their first Big 12 road trip. It's our first Big 12 game. It's our first Big 12 road game. Tell us about Stillwater. Tell us about the stadium. What are the Ute fans who are making the trek in for coming up on Saturday?
Man, when it gets to third down, those damn paddles will be banging against the walls, outside right there by the student section. It is loud. It is medieval. But if you are able to, you won't be able to get in at night. But if you can get in and show up around 3 o'clock on Friday, Eskimo Joe's. Great bar, live music. The chili cheese dog will make your left leg go numb, but it's so good. I mean, it's bar food to the nth degree. It's bar food on steroids. It's actually really good bar food. And the scene is magnificent. It is one of those staples, like the library at Ole Miss, in the Innisfree Pub in Tuscaloosa, Archibald's Barbecue in Tuscaloosa, Powerines in Baton Rouge. These are all staples, and when it comes to Stillwater and Oklahoma State football, it doesn't get any better than Eskimo Joe's. Put both hands in the dirt, get down like you're running the tush push for the Philadelphia Eagles, and fire off and attack some food, a cold beer, and enjoy some live music. It doesn't get any better.
Gotta love it. So you referenced K-State rolling into town, coming down to Provo. BYU stayed clean in the non-con. It's Jay Hill's second year as their D coordinator, and their head coach is Kalani. So now it looks like a team that is coached by Kalani and has Jay Hill as their D coordinator, at least through 3 games against competition that's not overwhelming. Ian, they've been really good on defense, but it gets real on Saturday. What should BYU fans expect Saturday night when K-State rolls into town?
I'm going to make this short and sweet, man, because I got to run to a Zoom for our for a production meeting for this Utah State Oklahoma State game. I'll be very, very simple. Chris Kleiman's squads will knock the snot out of you. They are a lot like Kyle Whittingham's boys. They're a lot like Kalani Sitake was as a player. They will knock the ever-loving snot out of you. They are a very physical football team that's faster than you think. I know Desmond Purnell's numbers aren't there right now, but he's kind of their heart and soul on defense. Keep an eye on Purnell, number 32. And Avery Johnson, again, he ran Will Howard out of town. Will Howard was like a local legend. Avery Johnson is so athletic. And with Matt Wells calling plays and dialing it up, he's getting better and better every week. Be very, very careful here. Because, look, not a lot of people are talking about BYU, an undefeated BYU team that came down to SMU as a double-digit dog and got a really strong win. Man, I'm telling you, you beat Kansas State, you're back on the national map. And I don't even know if Kalani wants to be on the national map. He's one of those guys, kind of like me. If I'm a head coach, I don't want you talking about my squad. Let me fly under the radar. And you look up late October, and here I am at 8-1, 9-0, and I'm shutting a lot of people up. You win this one, though, a lot of people will be talking about BYU football.
Ian, thank you, my friend. It's always a pleasure. Have a great, safe trip, and have a great call, okay?
My man, always enjoy it, Spence. Be well.
All right, Ian Fitzsimmons from ESPN Radio. He will be on the call for the national radio broadcast coming up between Utah and OK State. But don't forget, our radio call with pregame coverage with that guy, Porter Larson, will begin at 10 a.m. as kickoff is at 2. We'll throw it over to Bill, Scott, and Sly. We'll have you taken care of. So appreciate Ian's time. I want to tell you about my friends at Advanced Window Products. Sales and installation all in-house. There's no middleman markups. As I say every day, when you choose a business, you choose the people who run that business. Choose these people. Nate Orchard, mayor of Sac Lake City. Jake Weber, great people. They build, install, and they guarantee for life. It's high-efficiency replacement windows and doors, lots of colors to choose from. Their lifetime warranty can be transferred to the next homeowner. So if you're selling your home, this is actually a way to up the value of your property because you can just send it over to the person who buys your house from you. Highest quality custom windows in the state. Financing available. You can save now and you can pay later. So here's the deal. Football special going on this week. You can save $2,500 when you purchase 10 windows or more. Beat the rush and order today from the factory to your front door in 8 weeks or less. Phone number is 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. You can also check them out online at advancedwindows.com. All right, this broke just a little bit ago, and I actually will admit that I thought Jerome Miles was a Utah recruit because the Corner Canyon win over IMG, the broadcast referenced him as a young man who was going to commit to the University of Utah. Well, Jerome Miles, who was the number 1 recruit out of the States, a 4-star wide receiver from Corner Canyon, has just selected USC over Utah. So catching some people off guard. Like I said, I thought the kid was coming to Utah. Porter, you watched that game. You are familiar with Corner Canyon. What can you tell our listeners about this young man, Jerome Miles, who has said no to Utah? And he did the pump fake with the Ute hats before putting on the USC hat. I'm sure that's not going to make people all that happy.
Yeah, he's not only one of the top recruits in the state, he is one of the top wide receiver recruits in all of high school football. One of the more highly touted recruits that Utah was going after in this entire class. And yeah, he chooses USC, would have been Utah's first 5-star recruit ever. So again, it's one that I don't know that a lot were actually expecting him to make the pick to Utah, but they were in his final 3. They were in the mix all the way up until the end. And as you said, yeah, he throws a little pump fake out there. I don't know how that'll play, and I wonder, Spence, if USC and Utah see the field while he's a Trojan. You know, that Jaden Daniels, who we now see tearing it up at the NFL level, had a similar experience with Utah, and his first experience in Rice Cycles was not real kind. So we'll see if that happens. Obviously not Pac-12 foes anymore, but Jerome Miles, one of the top recruits in the country, is headed to USC, spurring the Utes, who were very close.
Yeah, there you go. So not great news for Utah football, but great news that you're in the mix for a recruit that's that highly thought of. So Oklahoma State, Utah coming up on Saturday. Porter, real quick, give me your take on this. So Ian didn't love the question about whether or not the winner of this game on Saturday is kind of in the driver's seat. Our guy Pate's point was when you look at the power index moving forward, both Oklahoma State and Utah have, I'll say, somewhat favorable schedules because, look, it is week 4. We don't know how things are going to play out. Is it fair to say that the winner of this game on Saturday is the front runner to win the conference? Is that fair to say?
It's close. You're close, right? Because we're inching towards the first week of Big 12 football, and we're already having conversations about the impact of these games. That tells us, the land we're in. There's so much parity, though, in the Big 12 that I don't think one game necessarily gives you the driver's seat. Maybe it gives you the what do they call it in the first turn in like motocross? The whole shot, right? I don't know if you're familiar with auto racing.
What do you did you say motocross?
And auto racing in all forms. The first guy to get to the first turn, it's the whole shot, right? He's the first leader.
Totally.
That's the parallel I'm making rather than you're in the driver's seat because there's just so much football to be made. But again, week 1, and we already have 2 games, BYU, Kansas State, Utah, Oklahoma State, that have real Big 12 implications on the line, and that's what we're here for. That's the exciting stuff. So counting down the days until Saturday.
Yeah, it's when you really start to learn, because I don't mean this disrespectfully to either Utah or BYU, because they both handled their non-conference business. And like I said earlier, I was under the opinion that if BYU was going to qualify for a bowl game, they had to stay clean in their non-con, which they did. Utah survived the one thing that we all talked about leading up to the season, which is what does it look like when Cam isn't playing to go 3-0. But now coming up this weekend, one road game, one home game, I think we're just going to learn a lot more about both these in-state Big 12 schools who did start out the season clean, which is all you can do after 3 weeks. All right, coming up on the other side, we'll do both college and pro football. Dalton Wasserman will stop by from Pro Football Focus. Stevenson Sylvester later on, Blake Murdoch, as well as Brees Frazier from the Salt Lake Tribune to talk some hockey. So a lot to do on a Wednesday afternoon. Keep it right here. All right, we're going to bring in Sly today. Stevenson Sylvester, one of the best to ever do it at the University of Utah, Super Bowl champ in the NFL with the Steelers. Blake Murdoch will be live in studio. Then we're going to do a little hockey today. Belle Frazier, she's new here. She is the new beat writer for the Utah Hockey Club, and their media day was today. The preseason gets rolling in just a couple of days, so we're going to do a little hockey on the program today on a Wednesday, but time for more football. One of our favorites, been on quite a bit. Dalton Wasserman, Pro Football Focus, back on the drive on a Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, Dalton. How we doing, man?
Happy Wednesday, man. Getting over the hump, right? And I'll tell you what, this past weekend of the NFL, just when you think you know everything, you don't, right?
Yes, sir, and we'll get there in a moment, but let's start with a couple of really big games involving our two Big 12 teams here in our state. We'll start with Utah on the road in Stillwater to take on Oklahoma State. The Utes are a slight favorite. The line as of now is Utah -2. We're all expecting Cameron Rising to play after missing last week in Logan against Utah State. Let's get a quick preview. What does Utah have to do, Dalton, to go on the road and get a win in Stillwater over OK State?
Rising does have to be healthy enough to throw the football, especially downfield, right? I think that's the element that was missing last year, and you've seen it when he's on the field this year, especially with Brent Keefe, where there's a vertical element to their offense. So offensively, we've already seen it this year. When he's been healthy, when he's on the field, they look really, really good. As far as their defense, it's kind of a weird element with Oklahoma State right now because coming into the year, you figure, okay, the Doak Walker winner, Ollie Gordon's going to carry them, and he's going to have a crazy 2,000-yard season and everything like that. And right now it's not happening. He's sitting at 3.2 yards per carry and doesn't have a run longer than 12 yards. It's actually been Alan Bowman that's been carrying Oklahoma State right now. So defensively, look, you don't want to just wait for Ollie Gordon to get it going now, right? Even though he hasn't gotten it going his first 3 games. So I think if you're Utah, don't be the team that lets Ollie get it rolling and have 200, 250 yards this week.
Does it feel to you that there are potential conference championship ramifications with this game? Now, look, it's only week 4, and, of course, there's so much left to do. But, Utah benefits this year with some scheduling stuff, and you can make an argument that this is going to be their toughest game by far. If Utah is able to go to Stillwater and get a win, what do you think that says about their chances to go on and win the conference?
Well, I think between them and Kansas State right now, you would have to consider them the 2 favorites to win the Big 12. And Utah, big thing last year was they had some heavy splits in their performance between home and road games. And at Stillwater, it's one of the toughest places to play in college football. And every year we get 2 or 3 games at Oklahoma State that just get absolutely wild and make almost no sense, right? That you just can't predict, and none of the numbers can predict. And there's something about Stillwater. So to go down there and get a win would be just massive. First of all, it would be arguably the biggest road win that you could have in the Big 12, other than a game maybe by somebody else at Utah, which is obviously another huge home field advantage. But to get a win over Oklahoma State, I think you're talking about 2 of the 3 or 4 best teams, at least through the consensus, in this conference, especially after what Arizona showed us last week, losing to Kansas State. It's a huge game. It's a huge game. And to start it off officially with Big 12 play with this game, I don't think it could get any bigger.
It is the first Big 12 game for Utah football. It's also the first Big 12 road game for Utah fans. So before we move on, Dalton, I wonder for our Ute listeners, our Ute fans here in the market that are planning on making the trek to Stillwater, what are they in for? What's the environment like?
It's loud, it's raucous, and it's one of the handful of stadiums in college football that does kind of seem to change the vibe on the field, and where opponents can get rattled and the ball bounces weird ways. That's one of those stadiums where there's certain things you almost can't explain. It's just every single year we see it. There's 1 or 2 games in Stillwater that just make college football what it is. But it's certainly a raucous environment in Oklahoma State. We see it, or at least we used to see it with Bedlam every year. It can be quite unpredictable. So, there's a certain point of this game where it's like, okay, all the logic and everything, even the stuff that I do all week, and then you go, well, it's at Oklahoma State, so there's bound to be something weird and unpredictable happening.
All right, let's move over to Kansas State, rolling into town to take on BYU down in Provo. It's an 8:30 local kick time, so it is a late start. See if any of our friends on the East Coast stay up for it. BYU has stayed clean in the non-con, but they really haven't been tested just yet. The teams they've beaten aren't great, and that's the deal with some of this non-conference stuff. But their defense looks really, really good. It was pretty impressive to watch K-State just bully Arizona all over the field. I mean, Arizona, of course, one of the Pac-12 teams that has joined this conference, and K-State it didn't even look like a fair fight. So this will be another, just like Utah, K-State. These are two teams that want to go at you, two physical, defensive-minded football teams. How do you think it plays out coming up Saturday night in Provo as K-State will roll into town?
I think for BYU, look, they do have to play good defense and much more disciplined run defense than Arizona played, because that's the challenge with defending Kansas State. Three really legitimate rushing threats in their quarterback, Avery Johnson, and their two running backs, DJ Giddens and Dylan Edwards. So run defense is going to be a key, and that's something I could honestly tell you for almost every Big 12 game that we talk about this year. I think the two big things in the Big 12 this year are quarterback play and run defense. And flipping over to the other side for BYU, I think Jake Retzloff has to play. This would be a big upset if BYU won this game, but if Jake Retzloff plays a perfect game, and the big thing that I found watching his tape and looking through the numbers is it's his ability to handle a blitz. That's when he struggles. He starts to struggle when teams start blitzing him. The good news is Kansas State doesn't run a whole lot of blitzes. They like to just send for and run their coverages. They're not generally all that aggressive. So if they stay conservative like that, Retzloff's going to have a chance to succeed on offense. But those are the two big things we're going to talk about in a lot of Big 12 games: quarterback play, especially in this case for BYU, and run defense stopping. I got to be honest with you, I don't know that there's a specific way to stop K-State's run game right now.
So before we move on, and you reference, kind of the top tier Big 12 teams, and I acknowledge the silliness of asking this, right before week 4. But what's your take as of today? Who do you think legitimately are the Big 12 contenders for real? The teams as of now you think can actually win this conference?
The big three right now are Kansas State, Utah, and Oklahoma State. I still think Arizona can do it, but they have to find somebody other than Tetero and McMillan on their offense that can produce, because right now their offense is just Noah Fafita and Tetero and McMillan just trying to will them towards the end zone. And I picked them in the preseason to win the conference. Fafita's excellent. McMillan's excellent. I think their defense is better than it showed against Kansas State, but they have to find other threats on offense. And I'll tell you what, UCF went and got a big win coming back from, I think it was 18 or 21 down at TCU. That was a massive win for KJ Jefferson to bring them back. I think they're a dark horse after we've seen, obviously, the struggles of Kansas and West Virginia. Jalen Daniels with the turnovers, and West Virginia's defense is just a mess right now. I think you're looking at the top three, though, of Utah, Oklahoma State, and K-State that have a little bit of a gap between them and everybody else.
All right, moving on now. But before we get to pro football, I do want to stay in the college ranks for a second. For the first time since 2008, Texas is the number one ranked team in the country. And Dalton, they sure looked the part. I mean, Steve Sarkisian played his college ball out here, and everybody knows the type of reputation that Sark has. And it looks like they've got two really good quarterbacks. It was fun to see Arch kind of do his thing. Obviously, that job is Quinn Ewers. Are you ready to say that you think they're the best team in the country as of today?
Yeah. Look, Max Chadwick and I, we put them number one in our rankings this week, too. Their offense is dynamic and explosive, and Sark's one of the best play callers in the country. Arch goes in there, and obviously it's nothing against Quinn. Quinn is fantastic, but Arch goes in there, and it looks just about the same. I mean, you got two great quarterbacks like that. You've got all the weapons they have on the outside, even Gunnar Helm at tight end. And then, I was at the game when they went into the Big House and really dominated Michigan. And their defense, I think, has improved, too. They got some transfer guys in the secondary. That was the one part that I was concerned about. But Texas right now, I think they look like the most well-rounded team in college football, right? Georgia, I think, they have to find some receiving threats. Ohio State, we have to see the quarterback in a big spot. Texas right now, the win at the Big House, the dominance against other teams, offense, defense, special teams, you name it. I agree with them being number one right now.
So speaking of the Big House, and every year, Dalton, I talk about this, I'm always skeptical about two teams that get a ton of hype in college football, because for some reason it feels like a lot of people in college football media just give the benefit of the doubt to big brands oftentimes, just because people love the history, the pageantry, and all of the romantic things people talk about college football. So I'm always skeptical about Notre Dame, and I'm always skeptical about USC. But I might be wrong this year about USC. Through 2 games, they look really good. They go to the Big House. Michigan's going to make a quarterback change. As of now, SC is a 5-point favorite, even though they're the road team. What do you think happens in Ann Arbor this weekend?
The game, and I think let's take it from USC's angle first. This is the game. The LSU win was a huge win. Don't get me wrong, but as far as the Big 12 or the Big 10, and the adjustments to the Big 10, this is the game that could make USC a playoff contender because they've got some other tough games on their schedule. I know they have to play Penn State. I'm not sure if they're playing Oregon this year, but this is one of the big games on their schedule on the road of their first Big 10 style game that can put them into playoff contention. I think coming into the year, we really thought about Ohio State and Oregon and Michigan and Penn State as like the clear four. But as good as Miller Moss is playing right now, we know Lincoln Riley's going to find points. And DeAnton Lynn, look, is it the best defense in the country? No, but he's a fantastic defensive coach who turned things around at UCLA. You can see him starting. They're at least playing more fundamentally sound defense, right? And as far as Michigan goes in this game, they're switching to Alex Orji at quarterback, and Orji's passing ability is certainly not anywhere close to an elite level yet. I think they're just going to lean into the run game. I don't know that you're going to see Orji throw the ball more than 10 times in this game, and they're going to try to just grind it out and win time of possession in their defense. But I think Lincoln Riley, I think Sarkisian with Texas put enough stuff on tape to figure out how to beat Michigan that I think Lincoln Riley's going to look at that and do some of the same things. And him and Moss are going to execute the game plan well enough. I have USC winning the game.
Baylor is in Boulder this weekend to take on Colorado. And, it was interesting to listen to the news cycle a week ago as Colorado was taking on their rival, Colorado State. And they were a healthy favorite, and they handled their business, although it looked a little bit dicey there for a minute. I see up on your Twitter timeline a tweet about Travis Hunter. It's interesting because Shedeur is talked about as the top 10 pick. Travis Hunter might be the best player in college football. Do you think there's a chance that it does look different consistently this year in Boulder?
I think this is it sounds funny because it's against Baylor, and Baylor's not considered one of the elite teams in the Big 12, but this is a big game. And I think the encouraging part, at the very least for Colorado last week, one, they got an easy win for the first time in forever. At least 28-9, you go, okay, that's a convincing enough score that they didn't take it down to the wire like they did against North Dakota State. But it's all about trench play. I don't think it's any secret. Everyone's talked about it. Offensive and defensive lines, stopping the run, finding a little bit of balance. They're switching starting running backs just about every week, and obviously giving Shedeur enough time to work to his weapons with Hunter and Wester and Horn and all the guys that he has. It's about trench play. So they went back and they retooled and they played well against Colorado State, but Colorado State in the trenches is not very good, right? They're kind of a spread out team, got some good athletes, but they're not great in the trenches. Now it's like, okay, a little step up. Obviously, if Dave Aranda's defense always poses its challenges, if Colorado plays, I think it's really simple. Colorado plays well in the trenches, they can win ball games, and if they don't, it will look more like the Nebraska game. It's a very clear thing here. So can they work their way back into it and win more games than they did last year? Absolutely, but they have to execute in the trenches.
Tennessee is the best offensive team in the country. They're the number 3 rushing offensive team in the country. And I don't know, man. I know Oklahoma's clean. It feels like they're kind of paper tigers to me. This might get loose. Are you a believer in the Vols, and what do you make of that game as they travel to Norman to take on Oklahoma?
I honestly, I know the game is in Norman. I think there's some problems for Oklahoma in this game. You just mentioned it. Tennessee is both explosive and powerful in the pass and run game. Their defense looks better than I thought it would. They have more depth on the defensive line than I thought coming into the year. They got some guys who are playing really well. Obviously, you saw what they did to NC State a couple of weeks ago, but Oklahoma offensively, the way they have played through 3 games, and I know they're 3-0, but I'm having a hard time seeing how they're going to keep up. If Tennessee finds their rhythm early in this game and puts up points early, Oklahoma right now, look, they have the lowest graded offensive line in the Power 5 for us. They're struggling at receiver outside of Deion Burks. I'm not even going to – I can't even sit here and say I have too much of a fair evaluation of Jackson Arnold because Oklahoma's dealt with a lot of injuries and they've had a lot of guys out and a lot of backup guys who aren't playing great. They've been getting by because their defense is pretty good. But if Tennessee puts up early points in this game, I would be very worried for Oklahoma. I think Tennessee's going to win this one pretty handily.
I know there's nothing to worry about for the following team on Saturday down in Oxford, but Ole Miss has a quarterback in Jackson Dart who played his high school here in our backyard. And I always try to understand early in the season who actually has a chance to do something special. Are you ready? I asked you about Tennessee. Is Ole Miss in that group with, with Texas, Ohio State, whoever else is up there? Is Ole Miss in that group?
Yeah, I think so. I would say I'm about 90% sure that they're going to be in the playoff. I think they are in the top 5 or 6 teams in the country, and it really just comes down to with them just their offensive line and even their defensive line, which looks much improved with transfers and things like that, just playing well in the big games. And we're going to find out a lot. Right now, look, I would favor Ole Miss in every game that they play, except maybe the Georgia game. And the way Georgia looked last week, you might even lean it towards Ole Miss. Then they're explosive. They run the ball. They throw the ball. The defense, albeit against softer competition right now, looks a bit better. But I have no question about Ole Miss in any game they're heavily favored in. It's just the big games, and I think the Georgia game coming up is going to be you're going to get that's the measuring stick is Georgia, right? And I don't have questions about Ole Miss and all their other games, and I think they are one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the country, and they just have to go out in the trenches against bigger teams and execute in the trenches also.
All right, before I set you loose, let's do a couple of pro football topics, a couple NFL topics. Bryce Young, the number 1 pick from a year ago, has lost his job. The Red Rocket is in. Andy Dalton. Baker Mayfield had some pretty cool things to say today. Sam Darnold looks great early on with the Vikings. So I don't think anybody is closing the book entirely, Dalton, but you can't argue that it didn't look great last year, and it was even worse through a couple of games. What are your thoughts on where we find ourselves in Carolina?
So the reason he got benched is because in these 2 games that you've seen this year, his issues are more isolated to him. Last year, I think we could make the excuse, and you could see it on the tape, where their offensive line was bad, the receivers everything was a mess last year, and you could see him trying to fight through it. Right now, their offensive line is actually playing really well, and we know they got some more receivers in there, Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette. Like, their offense is not devoid of talent this year like it was last year. Actually, right now, I believe they're the 5th best pass-blocking team in the league per our numbers. And yet, in clean pockets and in times when he should succeed, he's just not. It's a more isolated problem to him with the rest of I know the points and the stats don't show it, but it's hard to show it when your quarterback is playing like that, right?
Oh,
Dave Canales, they had to do this. They just had to do it because you can watch those games, and this year with these 2 games go, yeah, it's him, and the confidence looks shot, and he looks afraid to throw the ball downfield, and you can't have a guy who's out there afraid to let go of the football, right? And you're seeing a lot of reps like that where he's afraid to make a mistake. So last year, the entire team was a wreck, and I was a big fan of, throw away 2023 for Bryce Young. That team was a mess. Nobody could succeed behind that. I think they really do feel like Andy Dalton has a better chance to succeed with an improved team around him this year.
So Ben Solak joins our show from time to time, and his whole take is he thinks Bryce needs a new team, and he needs to change his scenery. And with the news that Tua Tagovailoa will at least be on IR and miss the next 4, Ben's thoughts, maybe Miami takes a shot at Bryce Young. Do you think Bryce will stick it out and try to get another shot in Carolina, or is this untenable and you think they move him to a different team?
I don't think anything like that would happen during the season. I don't. I think bringing in a quarterback midseason is very hard, and especially a guy like Bryce, whose confidence is shot. You've got the high draft pick and a bigger contract than a lot of rookie kids because he's the number 1 overall pick. So I don't think you would see anything like that until the season ends. And plus, look, Carolina, even if Andy's the starter, they need a backup. And if Bryce is that backup with at least some knowledge of the offense, well, so be it. I don't think I get the ideas, and I've seen certain other ideas with quarterback trades around the league the last couple of days, but I think they're still going to, behind the scenes, try to develop something out of him and see if he looks better in practice and everything else, and just find some confidence, and then maybe deal with that after the season.
So what do you think Miami does? Skylar Thompson is going to be the guy this week. They bring in former Ute Tyler Huntley to back him up, and we don't know what Tua's status is other than the IR situation, which means he's out for 4 games. Do you think they just ride it out with what they have, or do you think they look to maybe bring in a vet?
I think they ride it out. Again, it's very hard to trade for a starting caliber quarterback mid-season. And Thompson, we've seen him play before. He's got experience in the system. We've seen Huntley play before. He's had some good moments in the NFL. Somehow made a Pro Bowl, right? But, I think I think they're going to ride it out. They're going to see if they can just run the ball, because the Dolphins, honestly, not just the quarterback thing, and that's obviously the biggest one. They have other issues too. Their offense didn't look great even with Tua in there, and their defense doesn't look all that great either right now. They have more issues than just the quarterback. Would it help to have your starting quarterback in there to try to turn it around? Absolutely, but I don't know that a quarterback alone or a new quarterback alone would fix all of the problems Miami's having right now. I think they've got some team-wide things that they need to work on as well.
The number 2 scoring offense in pro football is the Arizona Cardinals with 69. The number 1 team in the NFL on offense is the New Orleans Saints, who scored 91 points through 2 games. How real is this, Dalton, as far as what we've seen from the Saints so far?
Well, I'll tell you this. Through 2 weeks, Clint Kubiak would win Assistant Coach of the Year by a unanimous decision. The system he's put in and what he's done with their personnel and the way he's just designed things that work for this specific team are massive, right? And I know Derek Carr's been really, really good, but it's in part because Kubiak's taken some of the load off out of his hands. I think he only threw the ball 18 or 20 times last week, but he's very efficient. Their run game is spectacular. The most surprising thing in football this year is the Saints, who are projected maybe to have a bottom 5 offensive line coming into the year. They have the number 1 graded PFF graded offensive line this year, number 1 so far. And Talisi Fuaga at left tackle, the rookie, is incredible. They moved Trevor Penning to the right side. They've gotten everything going up front. They're using more tight ends and more play action, and they've gotten into this style of ball that just more properly fits their personnel than the old system, including Derek Carr. Clint Kubiak's done an amazing job. This is going to be a fun week. They're playing Philadelphia this week at home. I think they have a very good shot to win. I think the Eagles might be favored by a point. I don't even think I would. I think I would favor New Orleans in that game. Their offensive system right now and the changes that Clint Kubiak has made has allowed them this success.
All right, before I set you loose, because you do a lot of scouting with rookies and prospects, the 3 young rookie quarterbacks have all really, really struggled. Caleb, Bo Nix, we got a ton of Bronco fans out here. Obviously, Jaden Daniels has looked pretty good. He's probably looked the best of the 3. What do you feel like you can say today as far as what's real about how they've struggled, or juxtaposed to that, your confidence in any or all of them figuring it out this year?
So Bo Nix, I think it's going to be tough for Bo because their team is just not their team and their entire offense is just not all that ready to compete. Their offensive line is kind of underwhelming, and they don't have any weapons that can get vertical. And combine that with a passer like Nix, who at Oregon was a very conservative passer. That's what he needs to be in this system. Anytime he's trying to force the ball downfield, it's a problem right now. And you would hope he's not picking up bad habits that he used to have way back in his gunslinging days at Auburn. So I think Denver needs to reel it in, in some way, and they need to find a way to run the football. The Bears, Caleb Williams, same thing. It's not just Caleb, even though he hasn't been great. The entire offensive unit is struggling. Last year, they were the 5th lowest graded offensive line in football. And I believe they're somewhere around that right now. The pass protection, picking up blitzes, and Caleb needs to speed up his process, and they need to run. Their running backs need to run for more than, I think, 27 yards they had the other night. That's another one where the entire unit is failing right now, and the one thing you hate to see with Caleb is he's putting the ball in danger. I think again, kind of like Nix, you can't have those habits. Daniels, at the very least, is protecting the football. Right. And I think that's the one thing more, as much as the athleticism and everything he did at LSU, one of his best traits was the throw an interception. And does he run a lot? Does he take too many hits? Yes. He's kind of learned to slide a little bit. Does he take a few too many sacks? Probably. Or things like that, than turning the ball over like the other two. And that's why they won the game, honestly, on Sunday against the Giants, is he's not going to give the game away. They're working on developing weapons. They're working on developing the O-line. Jaden's at least not losing football games for them. I think he clearly looks the best of the 3 for that reason.
All right, man, I appreciate the time on a Wednesday. Enjoy the weekend ahead. We'll get you back on again soon, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate you, as always.
All right, Dalton Wasserman, Pro Football Focus, does a lot of college stuff, does, of course, a lot of pro stuff as well, some of their scouting. You can find him on social media to get all of his work at PFF_Dalton is where you get him. All right, more football coming up on the other side. Stevenson Sylvester, one of the best to ever do it for his weekly hit. Blake Murdoch will be live in studio. Then a little hockey later on with Belle Frazier. So a lot to do. Keep it right here. Oh, that's right. You got the Murray. So we'll just have some fun. All right, we're going to bring in Stevenson Sylvester coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. We also have Belle Frazier. Belle is the new Utah Hockey Club beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune. It was media day today for the Utah Hockey Club, so we'll do some of that with Belle. Ian Fitzsimmons, who's going to be on the call for ESPN Radio for Utah, Oklahoma State. But joining me now live in studio, the best backup point guard in the state of Utah circa 1997. My buddy Blake Murdoch from Murdoch Auto. Blake, happy Wednesday, man. How you doing?
It's great to see you, Spence.
It's great to see you. Now we're on YouTube. We're on live stream. So if you want to see somebody that knows how to present themselves, you can check Blake out. I'm in a T-shirt. I'm in pajamas. It's the best thing about radio. But you're looking dapper today.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
So let's get into a couple things here. Obviously, with Murdoch, a lot going on with September. Grand opening at the Genesis store. It's the luxury brand for the Murdoch Auto team. You have me in a G80. It is awesome. So we'll get into some of that. But you come from a sport family. Your father, your brothers, and so I wanted to talk about some of the community ties you have at Murdoch Auto. You work with Utah. You work with BYU. Yes, that's possible. You can do that. So how has sport kind of shaped the paradigm of how you run your business and how it kind of permeates throughout your life?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting for people to know a little bit of our history.
For sure.
But more importantly, so back in the early 70s, my dad played football at BYU. He was just recognized in their first game of the season when they recognized the 74 team, the first BYU team to go to a bowl game.
Right.
So he was a sophomore that year, played 4 years straight at BYU. And so ever since I can remember, I was indoctrinated to be a BYU fan.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting ties between BYU and Utah are really fascinating. With the Whittinghams, my dad was coached. He was a linebacker coached by Fred Whittingham Sr., became one of his greatest allies, and became very dear friends. Well, after my dad graduated, went on a mission, came home, was a grad assistant at BYU, and ended up coaching Kyle Whittingham when Kyle was a linebacker. So that relationship continued with the Whittingham family, and of course, Kyle and Freddie, and even Morgan Scally, who's my age, and friends. We've got close ties with both. So I can honestly say I'm a BYU fan and a Utah fan. We don't like to see either of them lose. It was great when they weren't in the same conference.
Yeah.
Now that they're back together, we'll see how that goes.
I was going to ask you that because, my father rolls the way you do. He finished his undergrad at Utah and he got his MBA at BYU. So he's the whole hey, I like them both. I'm like, Dad, come on, But now that they're back in the same conference and now that they're both pretty good, they're both undefeated. I've been impressed with Kalani's defense, and Utah, of course, is Utah under Kyle. They've been a behemoth forever. Does it land differently that we're going to see them as conference foes coming up on the 9th here in Salt Lake?
Well, I don't know if I will be disowned by saying this or not, so I maybe won't say exactly what I'm thinking.
Fair
but
enough.
I also need to insert that my brother Ben, who's my business partner, played basketball at BYU
Yes, he
as
did.
well.
Yes, he
And
did.
so these BYU ties go deep,
Yeah.
and of course, so do the Utah friendships. So, it's hard to say. We want them both to do well.
Sure.
But-
Sure. Yeah. Look, Michael Jordan said it. Republicans buy sneakers too. So we
That's right.
understand the deal, man. We understand the deal. So if you're comfortable, let's talk about some of the relationships you have at Murdoch Auto with some of our local coaches, local players, and why it's important to you. NIL space has changed some things here or there. So to the extent that you're comfortable, Blake, let's talk about some of the relationships you have with some of the coaches and players in our market.
Yeah, it certainly has changed quite a bit. And, we're really, like I said, really good friends with the Whittingham family. And to be able to provide Kyle and both Freddie Whittingham vehicles is a lot of fun for their families. Also down at BYU, man, I think we provide 14 to 16 vehicles for their coaching staffs. And it's really fun. It's really fun to be able to be involved. Maybe a lesser known, which I think has been really cool, and to see how much UVU has changed and grown. We developed a relationship during the Mark Madsen era, and that's been able to continue, and that's been really cool as well.
So I wonder, Blake, as a lifer, as a Utah guy, and I more or less am, right? I mean, I was born here. When I was 10, we moved. I spent formative years back east, then came back, transferred, did my senior year at Bountiful. That's where we played basketball together. I think it's really remarkable how much we've grown, not just as a sports state, but as a state. Like every time I drive up north where we grew up, I look, the houses keep going up and up.
That's crazy.
And same thing down south. I can remember driving down south not that long ago where it wasn't until the point of the mountain where you start seeing, like, we are a burgeoning, growing economy and growing state. And also sports has taken on a bigger footprint here. We're getting hockey now. We have the soccer club. We have evolved into, in my opinion, a very healthy and passionate college football state. We've always been a basketball state. There is a gym in every church, okay? It's one of the things I always talk about moving out here, how many more kids knew how to play basketball than where I grew up, because even if you didn't play for the high school team, you played junior jazz, right? So from your vantage point, how have you seen our state grow and change from both just an economy standpoint and a sporting standpoint?
Yeah, it's been incredible to see, especially in the business that we're in, where everybody needs a vehicle and everybody needs their vehicle serviced. And so just to see the expansive growth, even with brands that when we got into the Hyundai world, Hyundai was not considered on nearly anybody's shopping list unless you needed a really inexpensive car. And just to see how our economy has grown, how the number of people have grown, how our brands have grown, it's been amazing to have not just the partnerships through athletic programs, but just to be a part of the community and see the development and all the great people that are being added to our state.
Do you have any hockey, anything, knowledge, love, excitement as we are about to see the NHL come here? It's going to be interesting. I think it'll be supported. I really do, because Utahns do show up. The tickets have really flown off the shelf, and I am curious to see about whether or not, what's the right way to say this? It feels like there's some ambiguity regarding the Jazz.
Yeah.
They're in the middle of a very long-term process. As I say every day, Danny doesn't need me to stand up for him. His track record is what it is. But in Boston, it took 7-8 years.
Yeah.
They just won a championship. Brad Stevens made some changes, but that was Danny's foundation, and this is what he's doing now. Any hockey move the needle for the Murdoch family at all?
So what's interesting about hockey is I know nothing about it. My college roommate played hockey, and I just made fun of him because he wasn't good enough to play any other sport.
Sure, yeah.
So, however, speaking of Boston, one of my closest friends that lives out there, he said, of all the sports, and that's a marquee town for every professional sport, he said the most desirable and most difficult ticket to get is the Bruins.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for that here in Utah. I hope that it brings that same level of energy and enthusiasm and interest. So
I've got to ask you this, because you and I are aging. I'm much older than you are, but you and I are aging athletes that don't. For me, I don't play basketball anymore because the last time I played in a competitive situation, I broke my leg. I'm not interested in tearing an Achilles, so I've taken up golf. I'm that guy that it's in my mid-40s, and I don't play basketball the way I used to, and I love it. I'm not going to lie. I was always skeptical of, like, golf bro. And I still don't want to be golf bro. Like, nobody likes the golf bro. But when I started playing during COVID, I got new clubs, took some lessons, and now I'm hooked. You were at Black Desert not too long ago, and we were talking off air. I was at Black Desert maybe two and a half months ago. And I'm walking around. I'm walking in. I'm looking around, and I'm playing the course, and I'm looking around. I'm like, dude, they're not ready for a PGA event at all. And then you walk in the clubhouse, there's a handwritten sign that said, "Don't worry, we'll be ready." Are they going to be ready just in a couple of weeks?
My question is, when you walked in the clubhouse, was it the clubhouse or was it the trailer?
No, it was the trailer.
Okay,
So
I was there Monday
Okay.
for an awesome event. Shout out to E4A, which is an awesome foundation for youth athletes in the state of Utah. They had their tournament there this Monday. The clubhouse is done. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful, and they're close. They got a lot of work to do in 3 weeks, but they'll present well.
Are you comfortable with me asking you to share the story of winning the Pro-Am with Netflix superstar golfer Joel Damon?
Oh, that was incredible. So with Genesis, we were invited, my brother and I, Ben, we were invited to go play in the Pro-Am. And the night before any Pro-Am, there's a draft party. And basically, we were at the bottom of the list. We drew a number where we were like maybe sixth from the last. And at the time, I didn't know who Joel Damon was.
Really?
But we drew Joel Damon. And the next day, his caddy, so this was Wednesday, the day before the tournament, down at the Genesis Invitational at Riviera, his caddy said, "Hey, when you get home tonight, you need to turn on Netflix because we're airing our episode." and on Full Swing.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'd never even heard of Full Swing.
Okay.
I mean, I don't really have time for television at this
Yeah.
point in my life. I'm
Yep.
sure that day will come. So he tells me about it. So on my flight home, I'm downloading Netflix, watching Full Swing.
Wait. You didn't even have Netflix?
No.
That's awesome. So you download Netflix so you can watch Full
So
Swing.
I can watch Full Swing.
All right.
And of course, I watched 2 episodes.
Yeah.
I watched Tony's episode, and I watched Joel's episode.
Yeah.
But as incredible as Joel seemed on the Netflix series, even better in real life.
That's awesome.
And his caddy, Gino, just as incredible. They
Yeah.
were so down to earth, so much fun. And then, of course, we won. We won the Pro-Am. So
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun.
So obviously all of the pros are different level, right? What stands out most? Because you're a good player, you're a good athlete. I played ball with you. I'm sure Ben's good too. But they're different, right?
Oh.
It's like all of us who tried to play any sport at a high level at some point. For me, it was my freshman year here, and I saw Andre Miller. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to join a fraternity. You guys enjoy playing basketball, right? At some point, you see what it looks like when they're pros. So what's it like to play with a pro golfer? Like, what are some of the things that stand out that make someone like that different than someone like us?
What I think is the most incredible thing is their ball striking is next level. They just don't hit a ball.
Yeah.
I mean, it may not go exactly where they want it to go. Another quick story about a Pro-Am. I was playing at the Shriners Invitational in Vegas, a decade ago. Played with Stuart Appleby, and for them, they use it as a practice round. Some of the pros are really cool. Some of them are like, hey, don't bug me. I'm really trying to get ready for the weekend. Stuart was awesome, but he gets up on a par 3. His caddy reads him the yardage. They're obviously not allowed to use the shooters, so he pulls out the yardage book and gives him the yardage. Stuart hits a shot, and he says, give me that yardage book. Goes and steps it off himself and proceeds to light up his caddy for being 3 yards off. So 3 yards, that's how good they are.
Yeah.
Because they know those distances. It's just it's incredible to watch.
You or Ben? Who's better?
Well, I believe in being honest.
Okay,
and
good. I like that.
Ben is better.
Ben is better than you are.
But with a handicap differential, I usually win.
Do you hit it farther than he? It seems like you would hit it farther than he does. Again, being honest.
I play a little bit of a draw. He plays a cut.
Okay.
So I am usually, if we both hit our best shot,
yeah.
I'm usually probably 20, 30 yards in front of him.
Right
if
on.
he's listening, he's going to be dying right now. But
no, it's all good. Look, how many brothers do you have?
I have 2 brothers, so
Okay.
there's 3 boys.
Yeah.
But I have 7 sisters.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but there's 4 boys in my family, so I get the competitive, and I would imagine your pops probably doesn't like to lose, right? Growing up,
No.
I would imagine you were raised in a rather competitive environment. Is that
Very.
fair to say?
Very.
So the brother smack talk is part of it, is it not?
Oh, it's so much fun.
All right, man.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, look, always great to see you. Like I said, I just want to say out loud, if you are not familiar with the Genesis series, because just quick backstory, I had an Audi that I loved it. And about 2 months ago, driving down First South, and a young lady just came barreling out of her driveway, and she sideswiped me, and I was lucky to be okay, but that car was cooked. And to wreck an Audi, you got to hit an Audi pretty hard. So it was pretty hairy. And I call you, and I'm like, hey, what's the deal with this Genesis series? And I knew nothing about it. And so let's talk about this for a little bit. So if I understand it, Hyundai is trying to do with Genesis what Toyota has done with Lexus, right? So
Yeah,
let's
I think that's the best analogy.
and let's talk about the G80, which I'm in, which I love. I mean, it's been a few months, and I love it just like I loved my old Audi. So let's talk about this car.
Absolutely. So, yeah, just a little bit about Genesis. Obviously, being launched initially under the Hyundai umbrella, but has become a standalone brand on its own, owned under the Hyundai Corporation out of Korea. But these vehicles are incredible. Engineering from Germany, styling from Asia, and I think where they really pride themselves is by putting the most content in a vehicle, from tech, from safety, that just comes standard, where you're not getting nickel and dime to buy that extra package, an extra 10 grand, an extra 5 grand. So when you're comparing side by side with a BMW or a Lexus or Mercedes, you are saving thousands of dollars for a product that I would say is superior, just not as well known.
Mm-hmm.
And as you've experienced, to drive those vehicles, it is a true luxury sports sedan. It's not just luxury or not just sporty, it includes the best of both worlds.
It absolutely drives just like the old Audi I had, right? And that Audi was a really very, very nice car. And if I bought a new one of those juxtaposed to buying a new Genesis, I think it's 30, 40 grand difference.
Yeah.
And to me, they're the same vehicle, quite frankly. To your point about the technology, it took me a minute to get used to because my Audi was a 2019, all right?
Yeah.
So, but it really is up to date with safety features, features that I still am trying to kind of ascertain. And I read, Blake, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that Hyundai hired the chief engineer from one of the BMW like 5 or 7 series to create this Genesis series. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so they hired the engineer over the M brand of BMW, so their performance series to be one of the engineers on the Genesis project.
Okay, let's talk about what you have this month. September happenings, again, grand opening, the Genesis store. It's as we've talked about, it's a luxury brand. If you are looking for a luxury car and you also want to save money, I cannot recommend it enough. Looks like we have some open house events as well. So let's just run through it. What's going on with the Murdoch Auto Group this month?
No, I appreciate that. So speaking of Genesis, we built the very first standalone Genesis store, not only in Utah, but one of the very first in the western United States. So for those of you listening that are in Utah County and driving back and forth, you've seen it right off the freeway down in the Orem area. For those up here in the Salt Lake Valley, it's the nearest Genesis dealership, and once again, the only one that is truly a standalone Highline luxury Genesis store. So the store itself is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It matches the elegance and the quality of the product itself. So we had that grand opening at the beginning of the month, and over the last 3 years, we've actually been remodeling and rebuilding our Hyundai dealerships. So we have 3 Hyundai dealerships, one in Logan, one in Murray, and one in Linden as well. And that has been a long road to get all the construction done.
Yeah.
So we're having an open house event at all of our Hyundai stores and, of course, our Genesis store this month.
Last thing, am I reading this correctly? You're about to celebrate your 100th anniversary?
Can you believe that?
That's unbelievable.
It's an incredible legacy. Obviously, most recently, my uncle K.O. and my dad Blake, Ben, my brother Ben, my cousin Tyson, and myself were the 4th generation. It was my great-grandpa that started as an automobile dealer in 1925,
wow.
and a lot of history between then and now, but we're excited for next year. We just celebrated our 99th anniversary, so next year coming up on 100 years.
That's awesome, man. Well, always a pleasure to see you. Best to mom and dad and the whole family, okay?
Great to see you, Spence.
All right, Blake Murdoch. Coming up on the other side, Stevenson Sylvester, then it's Belle Frazier, Ian Fitzsimmons. A lot to do on a Wednesday. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. We're going to catch up with Belle Frazier today. She is new in town. She is the new beat writer for the Utah Hockey Club for the Salt Lake Tribune. So excited for that. During the 5 o'clock hour, Ian Fitzsimmons from ESPN Radio will join us. He'll be on the call for Utah and Oklahoma State coming up on Saturday. But let's do some more college football. One of our favorites, one of the best to ever do it up at the U, Stevenson Sylvester, member of our broadcast team. Sly, happy Wednesday, man. How we doing?
Spence, happy Wednesday. What's going on?
Great to spend time with you as always. Before we look forward, let's look back. What stood out most to you, Sly, about what Isaac Wilson showed Ute fans last Saturday up in Logan?
Growth. I've been talking about it for a while. I've been covering this kid in high school for the past few years. So just seeing how much better he gets year to year and how much he's just grown up from game to game. He's gotten more playing time, more experience early in the season than we had anticipated, especially with Cam Rising coming back, and he's made the most of it. Especially from that first quarter to second quarter. I honestly think he came into the game ready to go, but the game plan wasn't. We started so slow on offense. We were so vanilla as far as our play calling was. Nobody's going to get energy or juice running those plays. So we started opening up, started making him throw the football. And when he started throwing and making those crazy passes that we seen, that's when his confidence started to come in and everything else and everybody else, because everybody else was seeing. I love when I have a teammate and I'm in awe of my teammate making incredible passes, incredible catches, incredible tackles, incredible plays, right? And so his teammates are getting more juice, and everybody just started to get better after that first quarter. So the biggest thing for me is his progression from the first quarter to second quarter into finishing that game.
So this week we are, we are expecting Cam under center. That's all the intel we have. I mean, I guess we won't know for sure up until the time where the first snap takes place and whether or not Cam's under center. I mean, all the intel we have, Sly, is that he is playing. I wonder what your opinion, and I was talking about this earlier, and I honestly don't know. I really have no idea. There's a lot of conversation about will Coach Ludd be a little bit more conservative with the play calling when Cam's under center just to make sure he's not hurt and make sure he stays healthy. Will they be a little bit more emphatic in their message to Cameron, like, hey, get down, get the ball out of bounds. We need you to be right. I wonder if you think what Isaac showed everybody last Saturday will allow the coaching staff to simply, obviously you don't want to be reckless and you want to stay healthy, but with it being clear now in a way that it never was a year ago that Utah does have a QB2, do you think that allows them to be a little bit more free with how they utilize Cam, if that makes sense?
No. You don't want to just say that I got a freshman in the wings and I could trust him like that. Like, you still want to be cautious and go with your horse that you're confident in the guy that's been there before, right? Cam Rising's been there before. He can take this team. He's a leader, et cetera, et cetera. He's got all the accolades and what we're looking for in your quarterback, and we've pumped it as so. And so you want to keep him in there, for many different reasons. So you got to be cautious. You got to be. Hopefully that was just a heads up for Cam, right? Because we talked about it, it's like we don't want to take away Cam's playmaking ability by just making him sit in the pocket, designing plays for him not to be dynamic, right? His legs, if you go back and watch the game in Florida in the swamp, his legs got us in position to do other things. Yes, his arm did as well, but his legs was a danger that all of these defenders had to worry about. And so that brings another level of articulation to this offense, something that defenses are going to have to prepare for. So I always thought that was awesome on our part. So I don't think that we should hold Cam back in that in that essence, but Cam himself needs to be smarter. I don't know about the play calling. I only thing that I would do is not run as many QB runs. Bill Riley calls it the student body lefts. I wouldn't be doing design runs like that, but definitely be able to get him out of the pocket and keep him dynamic and allow him to run in space and slide is what I would allow him to do.
So let me follow up with you about what you just said concerning Cam, because I've heard a lot of people, Sly, say he's got to be smarter. He's got to be more careful. And the play where he got hurt, it was early down. It was good field position. He did not need to try to make a play. But
Right.
when it's fight or flight for somebody that is like Cam, someone's like you just kind of revert back to that competitive fire you have that makes you who you are. Can you really expect Cam to change the way he plays in order to be a little bit more careful because Utah needs him? How exactly do you do that, Sly?
Yeah, I mean it's literally smart. The quarterback position is different than my position, right? Us and me comparing myself to what Cam has to do to be smart and what I have to do to be smart, I feel like it's completely different. But it's exactly what you said. It's an early down, live to fight another down, set ourselves up, be smart, think ahead. Um, and I don't think Cam Rising really thinks ahead right now. He's thinking of making the plays right now, and he needs to be and he has the ability. We've seen him do it in championship games the last few years, so he has the ability to. It's just early in the season, even against teams like Baylor or Weber State or whoever we played. SUU, I mean, teams like that, you just got to understand is like it's not worth it. Let's just really work the offense and make that work. I don't have to be superhuman right now. I just need to get everybody involved. I have so many weapons on this team. Me utilizing my legs is not doing any justice in these games that aren't, um, I hate to say as important, right? Because every game is important. But, there's levels to every game. This game, Oklahoma State, this is a very important game where I want to use Cam Rising's legs. That Baylor game wasn't. And so Cam just needs to understand the situation, right? Is this the fourth quarter? Is this, the fourth down where we really, really need this? Is our momentum draining? Our defense is playing great. They're going to save me even if we go 3-and-out here. I don't have to be superhuman right now. And so that's the type of thought process that Cam needs to go through in understanding the situation and what's at hand for this team.
All right, Sly, as you know, Oklahoma State, well, they have a balanced offense, but they have a great running back in Ollie Gordon, and Rasul Faizan from Utah State goes for $115. And I would imagine for somebody like you that made a living on the defensive side of the football, you probably were able to see some things that Utah needs to clean up this week prior to a tricky road trip to Stillwater. What did you see from the defense a week ago that allowed Utah State to go for 385, and what do they need to do specifically to be better coming up on Saturday?
Well, what sucks is early part of that game we were asleep at the wheel. We weren't playing like ourselves, and that happens. I understand that, completely. Coach Whittingham said it at halftime, and even after the game, I don't know what the heck our mindset was in that first half, and I completely agree with that. The other part that I don't agree with, or that I'm actually worried about, is how important Corinne Reed is to this defense. As a linebacker, I watch the linebackers, very closely, and just the communication pre-snap and you can get the plays from the sideline, which comes in late. That's a whole other conversation for me. But getting the plays from the sidelines, getting lined up, that's one thing. But alerting possibilities is also a huge part of playing defense, right? It's the anticipatory reaction, right? That's good defensive people. If I understand what could possibly come and I can react faster, because, defense, I have to react to what the offense is doing. Now, the rate of reaction is what makes you a good defense or not. And because Corinne Reed is not in there, his ability to communicate what is possible ahead of time from film study and all of this is the biggest difference maker. So he can tell Lander Barton, hey, pullers are coming. Make sure you get downhill quick and I'll get over the top of you. That communication is not happening, and we're a step slow. That's where Rasul Faison ended up getting, his chunk yardage plays. That plus the play coming in late from Morgan Scalley, and the defense not being lined up, which hopefully they'll fix this week. There's things. I'm not a coach, but I do have some suggestions if they wanted to reach out to me. But I know Morgan Scalley won't do that. But that late play call is atrocious for us being able to understand what the offense is doing and make the right plays and adjustments. That's where Utah State got the edge, and hopefully that was a sign that we need to fix that going into conference play. So, but as far as our defense, we definitely have the talent. but I think Corinne Reed is the biggest missing factor on the defense, and it's bigger than just him being there. His mindset and his communication is extremely key for this defensive success.
Fans are funny. We love them because, they certainly are the lifeblood of sports. I mean, that's
Mhm.
where the passion comes from. Quite frankly, that's where the revenue comes from. That's why whenever fans get upset, I always say you've got one course of option. If you've got one option, one course of action, I should say. If you're
Mhm.
not, thrilled with the direction of your favorite team, you could just stop paying for tickets, stop paying for merch. All that's, I mean, everything comes from the fans. But ultimately, sometimes it's interesting to watch the reaction when the score is in 48-0 after 5 minutes. So 14-3, and people start panicking. I start getting text messages. I'm looking on social. I never really felt like that was going to get away from Utah. That's just me. It was like the Chiefs-Bengals game. I just felt like the Chiefs were going to win. I don't know why. I just kind of felt like that. We had Scott Mitchell on yesterday, and he actually said he was nervous early on with the way how it started. Did you ever get the feeling, Sly, that Utah was in trouble of losing that game last week?
No, no, not losing. I was pissed off. I wasn't worried about us losing because I understand that it's a long football game, right? There's different things you could do. We never were out of hand. What I was pissed off at and upset about is what we're putting on tape, is what other teams are game planning against us. Not necessarily this game, but I think as a dominant team and as we're set up personnel wise, experience wise, and structurally, we should be striking fear into our opponent. What we're allowing by what we're putting on tape is we're giving other teams hope. We're giving other teams confidence in playing against us. That's what I was upset about. Being down 14-3, yada yada yada. We're a dynamic football team. We can literally score in seconds. You saw it in the SU game. When we opened the playbook, you seen it last week against Utah State. We have the dynamic ability of scoring. We have the ability on defense of taking the ball away and even scoring on special teams. We have those abilities. So that didn't worry me. My worry is instilling confidence in our opponents and game planning against us, because that's where you get beat. You get beat when somebody's not afraid of you and they don't have to worry about it and they come in with an attitude. If they come in slightly fearful of you, you already have an edge. That's why they say the game of football is mental, right? Like it is 85% mental, because it is. And there's many levels to the mental part of the game, but striking fear and emotional fear into an opponent when you're not before you've even played them is a big, big factor. In high school, there was dominant football teams and you had a fear before you played them. And so you started off a little wary, and then they scored quick, and you lost confidence, and then everything goes out the window, and they win, right? But the upsets happen is because somebody isn't scared, right? Appalachian State wasn't scared of Michigan in 2007. Right. This year, Northern Illinois, whatever Illinois team versus Notre Dame, wasn't scared coming into that football game. And so those are the things that I was afraid of and pissed off with what we were putting on tape.
So, as you know better than anybody, the early part of the season is about improvement week to week. Well, the whole season is about getting better week to week. But certainly early on, with the way the schedule is played out, Sly, for the Utes, you've got 3 games where we all thought they were going to win all 3, which they have. But away from the results and over to the process, from your eye, Sly, have you seen Utah football improve week over week over week?
I saw our offensive line improve. That's what I liked. I kind of broke this down just a little bit for whatever you can on TV. The offensive line got some attitude about them in that Utah State game, and I love that. That's what we need. And they started to play more in unison. They started to talk a lot more smack. They started to do things that you want to see in your offensive line and defensive line, and getting nasty and getting in those trenches and pushing people out and establishing dominance. I saw that in Utah State later on in that football game. That's what I absolutely love. That's what I like progressionally week to week. Receiver wise, I think we've gotten better because, playing more games, you're getting a little continuity. We saw some lightnings in the bottle from Dorian lead-in singer in this football game. Getting him the ball was awesome. I think Caleb Lohner uh, has grown in that position of running that fade route. I think they've worked it well. One, Caleb Lohner and Isaac Wilson in practice and training camp, those two were working on the fade balls a lot more than Cam and Lohner was. So they already had that connection. So that was pretty nice. But I am worried about Cam Rising. Right, I still to this point don't think he's had enough playing time. He's had one half in SUU and 1.25 quarters against Baylor. And even that first quarter, there was just a lot of good defensive performance that had him short drives. Otherwise, that's all we've seen of Cam Rising in almost 2 years. That's not good. And that's not the type of experience that he needs heading into a hostile environment in Stillwater. That's what I'm worried about as far as week to week development. I think the defense is understanding where they're at personnel wise. You got young guys stepping up at the corner position. Absolutely love what Cameron Calhoun was able to do when he got his opportunity. You saw his confidence and what his athletic ability and why we wanted to pick him up in the transfer portal from Michigan. Just those things right there. Him playing man coverage was absolutely awesome. So love young guys stepping up like that. We're going to definitely need them against this receiving core at Oklahoma State this week. But there's tons of guys on defense that are making plays. I need to see a little bit more development out of Sione Fotu and the backups at linebacker. This week, Lander Barton's got to play out of this world. He's got to have multiple turnovers, forced fumbles, interception, sacks, tackles for losses. He's got to play out of this world this week and step up for that linebacker room. And defensively, I think we'll be fine. But for me, my worry goes to Cam Rising. And if he's ready to go, if he seems sluggish in this game, it could bring the morale down. And that's what I'm not waiting for, because games like Oklahoma State, you got to strike fast and strike often. You don't have no time. No. See all this crap where we're trying to be like nice and just methodically move down the field. We don't have time for that in Oklahoma State. We got to get up by 21, 28 points. And that's where we got to establish and be comfortable with the lead. We can't be schmoozing around in that first half. We gotta put it on them and put it on them fast.
So let's move over now to the running back room, Sly. It does feel like a couple of backs have separated themselves from the pack, and Mekhi Bernard and Mike Mitchell, maybe with a side of Dijon Stanley, a little Charlie Vincent. So I want your thoughts on the running back room, how it's played out. But I also want to ask you, Jalen Glover has had some really good games throughout the course of his 3 years here, some 100-plus games, and big games that Utah needed him to play well in order to win. I wonder what your thoughts are on the way it's played out and your thoughts on Jalen feeling like, as of now, he's the odd man out.
Well, it sucks, man, because it doesn't seem like it's a performance thing as much. It's more of a morale thing. And one thing about Coach Whittingham teams is you gotta fit the culture. As we've seen with Tavion Thomas, if you're not fitting the culture, then you're not going to play. There's talent on this football team. That's another thing too, is the talent on this football team is deep. Right, it's so deep with Mike Mitchell, Mekhi Bernard, Dijon Stanley getting a ton of reps. Even Charlie Vincent is getting in there and making things happen. So the talent on this football team is extremely, extremely deep. But you got to make it up, and it's more than your play on the field. Coach Whittingham loves 100% well-rounded players, from the classroom to the meeting rooms to your attitude to your performance on the football field. You got to check all the boxes. And in a skill-filled team like this is, where the talent is just is limitless, you can't make a mistake anywhere. And that's what it kind of sounded like, because Jalen Glover, I've absolutely loved him. I loved his devotion to this team, his ability to stay around here and make things happen. And hats off to him for that, for this point. But it's very hard to get playing time with this much talent around. So you gotta be perfect. And when you get your opportunity, you gotta play like you've been playing the whole time. So that's what sucks. So I love Jalen Glover. Wish he had more opportunity, but I think he's one of those guys that will step up when we really need him down the road. So I just hope he stays ready and understands that. But yeah, man, Mekhi Bernard is still in the show. You could tell we missed him last year. His dynamic ability was awesome. I'm glad that we have him here and have him around and playing the way he's playing. Because one, he's your team guy, right? He's the guy who makes it light, who takes it serious, and people look up to, and he sets the tone. He's your tone setter for your whole team. And so I love him being around and how long he's been around this Utah program. He knows what to do, and people can look up to him for that. All the newcomers and newbies, but Mekhi Bernard is definitely your workhorse right now. And I didn't think he was your first down back, which I don't think he was. He wasn't your first down back a year or two ago. But now the way he's running the football, you can give it to him all three downs. He can be your versatile running back that you can split out and use as a receiver and bring back into the backfield. He's now become that guy. He wasn't before, and he's now. So I absolutely love that. But this running back room is deep, and I'm excited to see what they do against Oklahoma State.
Tell me what you see when you watch Mike Mitchell run, because it feels like, and I agree with you, Mekhi has really grown and evolved into not just a third down, pass it out of the backfield guy. You can hand it off to him. He showed it against Utah State. There's something to like about Mike, though, about Mike Mitchell. What stands out to you?
He's got a lot of growth, honestly. I think our offensive line has blocked pretty good thus far for him. His yardage a lot came here in this Utah State game. As I said, I think our big boys up front has had an attitude change in the latter parts of that football game, and absolutely loved it. We were able to establish a run as well as the pass, and he was a part of that. For me, I haven't really seen what I need to see as dynamic as he can be yet. He has potential just like everybody else, but I think he's benefiting from our offensive line playing extremely well in the latter parts of that game. But I still need to see more consistency out of him. You know, I've seen 2 fumbles from him this year, and that just can't happen. And we've only played 3 games, and so I got to be more sure of him being that quality guy that we can put in. Right. And maybe you just need a game where that happens, where your opportunity is like, we're giving you the ball 20 times and you give us 140 yards. And that's what changes it. But to this point, I haven't seen that. And I still think there's a lot of growth, but a ton of potential behind Mike Mitchell.
So we've been having, I don't know if I'd say a debate on the show today with a few different guests, but I've heard more than a couple of people say that whoever wins in Stillwater on Saturday is the front runner to win the conference. It's only week 4. I get that. But the job of the business of media is you just come up with storylines, man. It just is. You can hate it as much as you want. So I wonder, from your vantage point, just how big do you think this game is for whoever wins on Saturday, Utah or Oklahoma State? What does it do to set the tone for the rest of the year?
I mean, it's the first week of conference play. And honestly, I got to look at Oklahoma State's schedule to see who they play after this.
We got K-State
Because
next
I
week.
actually, yeah, I mean, I know Gundy was talking about it. Whoever's schedulers, he needs to send some lumps of coal over there, or something bad to their house. Whoever scheduled his schedule this year, but Arizona has a good schedule, right? Like Utah plays Arizona next week. Arizona's on a bye week right now, so they'll have 2 weeks to prepare for Utah. So that sucks for us. But I do agree with you. I think whoever comes out of this game is that front runner. Oklahoma State does have Kansas State next week, so they're going to have tons and tons of emotion coming into this game against Utah, and then have to go play against Kansas State next week. So I think Utah will definitely be in the driver's seat, coming out of this game, more so than if Oklahoma State gets the win and be in the driver's seat, simply because they got to play Kansas State next week. But I do think that, once you get this top 15 matchup, out of the way, I think that whoever wins this game is going to have confidence that they're going to win the conference, go into the Big 12 championship game and do it. But I think these next 2 weeks are more of the determinant for both Utah and Oklahoma State than just this week.
All right, it's a lot of good stuff today, man. Have a great week. Travel safe out there. Have a great call. We'll chat soon, okay?
I will, man. Thanks, Spence.
All right, Stevenson Sylvester, one of the best to ever do it at the University of Utah, NFL Super Bowl winner with the Steelers, now on our broadcast team here on ESPN 700. Get him on Twitter at @SSylvester55 is where you find him. All right, before we catch a break, let's welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. It's been 3-4 weeks now. I've had all the football I've wanted, college and pro style, Red Zone, Big 12, SEC, Big 10, you name it. There's really only one service that you can get that gives you that. It's what I have, and that's Dish. It's 801-424-DISH. Give them a call today at 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
Yes, we've got some cool extra incentives. Dish has hooked us up with the ability to get people OTAs. And this is a neat little thing. You're like, what's an OTA? Or it's an off-air antenna. The locals are actually broadcast for free, right? So you can watch those for free. Well, the Hopper system allows you to basically plug that into the Hopper, and it will actually get you all of your locals. And Dish will drop the bill $12 a month. Guys, this gets you a package cheaper than most of the streaming services out there. And you get ESPN's, the sports, the NFL Red Zone, movie channels. We'll have you installed as early as next day. Watch all the hockey you want, all in one place. Call us up and take advantage of this. Don't go without. Get the biggest DVR. Have the best system out there, plus dinner at JCW's with the feeling that you got the very best price. Call us today and let us hook you up. It's 801-424-DISH. That's 424-3474.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Pros. Coming up next, Media Day for the Utah Hockey Club. And the regular season begins in just a matter of weeks, preseason just a matter of days. So we're going to bring in Belle Frazier. She's the new Hockey Club beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune. Ian Fitzsimmons will stop by 5 o'clock hours, all college football. We got about an hour and a half left in the show on a Wednesday, so keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, we got Ian Fitzsimmons joining the program about an hour from right now. He'll be on the national radio call for Utah, Oklahoma State. Don't forget, you can hear our call as your home of the Utes starting at 10 a.m. with that guy. Porter Larson pregame coverage, then 2 o'clock kickoff live in Stillwater. That's about an hour from right now. Not the game, the interview with Ian. But today was media day for our local pro hockey club. That's right. We have one of those. We are Hockey Town USA. Our next guest is new around these parts. She is the Utah Hockey Club beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune. She is Belle Frazier on a Wednesday. Belle, happy Wednesday. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for taking the time. Welcome to Salt Lake. So let's start right there. What's it been like? I know it's been a bit of a whirlwind, but what's the process been like that landed you here in Utah to cover this hockey team?
Yeah, it's been a crazy couple days. I got here Sunday evening and then right to work on Monday. It's been so much fun. Media day today. You know, the players are excited. The fans are excited. You can really feel the energy around the team with training camp opening tomorrow. So I'm just ready for things to get going. There's no better time than hockey season. And yeah, happy to be here. It's my first time in Utah. I'm taking in the mountains. It's beautiful. So I'll definitely have some exploring to do on my off time. But for now, it's all things Utah Hockey Club.
So let's hear about you. I understand I'm a child of the Northeast. I grew up back there. I'm a transplant. I've been here like 25 years. This is essentially home. But I understand that you spent some time back there. So let's hear, Belle, about the process, the journey, when you first started to love the sport of hockey. What's it been like for you to kind of grow up where you grew up, the teams that you loved? Like, let's hear about you, the process that landed you here.
Yeah, so I'm from New York City, downtown Manhattan. So I grew up a huge New York Rangers fan. We are like a 20-minute walk from the Garden. So I think my first game when I was like 2 months old with my dad and kind of just grew up with that team. And, you know, I used to just love it because it was our time spent together and I would learn the rosters and stuff to impress him. And then I was like, wait, I'm actually really interested in this. So, you know, it started just as a love for the game and then got into journalism in high school. And I ended up going to Boston University, which was the best 4 years ever. I graduated in May, but I was on the Daily Free Press there, and I covered both men's and women's hockey. The men's, we got to cover 2 Frozen Fours. They made it to the national semifinal 2 years in a row. We're unable to finish it off, but yeah, that was amazing. And I also covered the Bruins last year for the Hockey News in Boston. So this is kind of really what I've always wanted to do. And, you know, when this opportunity came up, just a dream come true. And I packed my bags and now I'm here. So super grateful for the opportunity. And yeah, I think it's kind of always been what I thought I could do. And now I'm kind of just living the dream out here.
So I always talk about this. I grew up in Fairfield County, Connecticut, and my father worked in Manhattan, but I refuse to say I'm a New Yorker because that's an insult to actual New Yorkers. So we are from the same footprint. We grew up cheering for the same club. I'm also a Rangers fan. So for our new hockey fans out here that didn't grow up with it like you and I did, what would you say to them about what it's like to experience NHL hockey in a live setting?
Yeah, I mean, it's the best ever. I think speaking from experience in New York, growing up in the city, it's very crazy, daunting place. I was kind of a shy kid, and then you go to a game and it doesn't matter, boy, girl, you know, political party, your opinions, whatever, like you're high-fiving, you're hugging everyone, beer spilling on you as like an 8-year-old, and you just kind of feel connected to something greater than yourself. And I think that's really what Utah is going to try to do here. You know, Bill Armstrong, Chris Armstrong, the team talked about it today. They want the fans to be connected. They said if it's a big success, it means that they've connected with the community and created relationships here. And I think apart from the wins and the scores and the storyline, it's really those relationships you make watching the game. And hockey itself is just so fun. You know, there's never downtime in the action. It's back and forth, and the goals and the goal song, you know, we don't know what Utah's is going to be yet, but it's not like baseball or football where you can kind of take your eyes off the screen. So, I mean, I'm biased. I think it's the most fun sport to watch, and hockey fans, they're rowdy. You know, it's always going to be a party, and it sounds like Delta Center is going to be pretty packed this season. So expect nothing less here, and probably a bit more energy for opening night, seeing that it's the first one.
So I know that you just landed here, but I'm sure you've done your due diligence and done your research, and obviously
Yeah.
are very well aware of what I call a very audacious project taken on by Ryan and Ashley Smith, and give them credit for even trying this because, it's funny, Belle, when Ryan announced that he was interested in a franchise, I had information that I believe was accurate that the NHL was not looking to expand anytime soon, maybe in a couple of years. And if Ryan and Ashley were ready in a couple of years, maybe the NHL does look at Salt Lake City. We had Commissioner Bettman on the show, and he referenced that this turnaround was unprecedented, not just really. I'm just realizing you have a 917 number. I'm getting homesick. Not just because of the fact that, it was going to be so quick, just because of the fact, this is kind of unprecedented in almost all of pro sports to have a pro franchise relocate this quickly and then be ready to start in just a number of months. So I wonder what your opinion is on what Ryan and Ashley have decided to do, and then the progress that they've made and how prepared they are to get this thing going, because it has been drinking from a fire hose, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And I will say the first thing anyone from the front office or players said today was just how amazing Smith Entertainment Group has been. They were like, anything we asked, they have done. They're a winning culture. They have put the time, effort, and obviously money into them having a comfortable start to the season. And like you said, these things usually take 2 to 3 years to get up and running. And Chris Armstrong made a funny point. He said exactly 5 months ago to this day, so it's September 18th, on April 18th, he was in Arizona with Ryan and Ashley Smith, and they sat the team down in an Arizona room there and told them, this team has been bought, we're moving to Utah. And to think that that was less than 6 months ago that they just broke the news to the players. And, since then, they built a practice facility at the Olympic Oval and retrofitted the ice there to make it NHL quality, designed and released jerseys, conducted their first draft, signed free agents, made really big trades. And then obviously they're working on the multi-year renovation at Delta Center, which they're going to play there this season. They have a nice locker room, but they're still working on that. And then also bought shops at Southtown and broke ground there to make their team facility where there's going to be a couple rinks, offices, and all of that stuff is supposed to be done September 2025. So it's hard to wrap your mind around how much this organization has done in 5 months, but I think it just shows how much Ryan Smith and his group believes hockey will succeed in Utah and how receptive people have been to it. You don't do this type of work if you don't have an active audience. So, yeah, I mean, I have no way of explaining how we are where we are right now, but it's pretty incredible feat for them and good for the team. A lot of the theme from today was just stability and only being able to focus on hockey and not where you're going to have to move your family in 6 months or a year and your future. So the fact that these guys have a home, have a home rink, have a tentative name, things like that, I think you'll probably see translate into a better brand of hockey on the ice as well.
How ready, in your opinion, Belle, is this team to potentially compete for a playoff spot this year? It was pretty funny, and this was far before you were on the beat, but when they had their introductory press conference here, the Delta Center was packed. I mean, there were a lot of fans there, but the players were really hyping up the crowd and, the spicy tuna chant, and everybody was going crazy. And Bill Armstrong stood up and took the mic. He's like, hey, everyone knows we're rebuilding, right? Like it was a really funny moment because, the general manager wanted to remind the community, like, hey, we're really young and we got a ways to go. But they make some veteran additions this offseason. How ready, in your opinion, do you think they are to compete at a high level right away this year?
That's the balance, right? And I think it's hard, like you said, the players hyping it up, but also remembering where this team is and where they were last season. And the offseason acquisitions, especially on the back end with Sergachev, Marino, Ian Cole, they didn't have a big problem scoring goals last season. I believe they averaged 3.1 goals per game, but on the other end, they were giving up 3.3 something. So obviously you're not going to win if you're giving up more goals against than for. And they added Stanley Cup champions to their blue line. And Sergachev has the chance to be a number one defenseman for the first time in his career. He was playing behind Hedman in Tampa Bay. He was injured for a lot of last season. So I think that bolsters the team tremendously. But that's not to say that just earns them a playoff spot. It's the Western Conference. It's hard. They're coming from a 27th place finish last year. But, Clayton Keller said today, in the quote, "I expect big things every year is a kind of new challenge. We definitely want to take that next step and be in the playoffs." So, every NHL team goes into the year wanting to win the Stanley Cup, wanting to be in the playoffs. But I think even though this is year 4 of the rebuild, this is when things take a turn, and even if it isn't a first round appearance, it's being 2 or 3 points away and having the games down the stretch matter. When Utah was the Arizona Coyotes, the last 3 months of the season was kind of just free hockey, like it didn't, you obviously want to win, but it didn't have postseason implications. So I think even if it just means that they're playing an important, impactful hockey down the stretch, that's a difference than the team was last year. So, it's little victories. And I would say, I said this to someone today, that if they didn't make the playoffs, I'd be like, all right, like that's fine, but if they did, you'd be like, wow, good for them. So that's kind of where I see it. I'm not going to say it's a 0% chance, but I also do think it's true. You have to temper the expectations. It's not going to be, crazy out of the gate. There's going to be ups and downs with a team that has so many young players. But again, I think the relocation and the, investment in them behind the scenes has to go a long way. And then, we'll see come October 8th, home opener against the Blackhawks.
So I'm curious to get your take on the dynamic of who the rival will be, because every team needs a rival. And so it seems like Colorado is a natural choice as a result of the proximity and the geography. Our local soccer club has what's called the Rocky Mountain Cup with the Colorado Rapids. There's a little Jazz Nuggets history, not a ton, but a little. It feels like it's natural, Belle, that the rival of the Utah Hockey Club will be the Avs. But the Avs are good. I mean, they're really, really good, and they're going to be good for a minute.
That's a tough rival.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just wonder what your take is eventually when the dust settles. And, we've talked to a few people about this, and they say, well, it will be settled in the playoffs with things at stake. I wonder what your take is on who the rival ultimately could be once everything kind of settles in.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Colorado makes sense, but this is a fresh slate for Utah, and those rivalries, they don't come after 1 or 2 games. That's historic. You think about, our Rangers back home and playing the Devils and the Islanders, and, even the LA Kings now, that comes from losing against them in the Stanley Cup Championship. So I don't think there's going to be any deep-seated rivalries yet. Like those fiery ones that they put on national TV and stuff like that is years and years in the making. So I think that's exciting. Who knows what types of games they're going to have against people in their conference, out of their conference. And like you said, if they make it into a playoff spot, that first round, win or lose, it's probably going to be their biggest rival, right? So I think that's another exciting thing. Everything for this team is a first rival, first win, first loss, first everything. So that'll be another interesting thing to see. But yeah, geographically, let's go Colorado. But I'm sure now that we say that, it'll completely change once the season starts.
Yep, these things take time. All right, so a big thing around here has been, what will the name of the team be? What will the logo of the team be? What will the colors be? What will the mascot be? And I have the most unpopular take, which is keep it Utah Hockey Club. I like it. I just kind of like the simplicity of it. I think you can make a really nice, clean HC sweater. That will not happen. I know that. That's just my wish and desire. We do tend to, you'll learn, Belle, in this market, we love Disney. We love fun, whimsical fantasy, things like that. So I always anticipated we would settle on some sort of overthought kind of corny name. That's just me. But I heard there were a couple of hints today, potentially, maybe some a slip of the tongue type thing that indicates that potentially we are getting close to a permanent name. Any insight there?
Yeah, well, I don't think they are going to announce one this season. That's what it seems like. Chris Armstrong today, the president of the team, said, from day one that they really wanted the fan base and the community to be part of building the name, building the team identity. So they've had the polls out. And he said they do have a good understanding of what the fans want it to be. I believe Yeti is the front runner of the polls right now, but he said, from the back end, it's kind of a complicated process, legal, trademarking, intellectual property perspective, that type of thing. I don't know if that is just cutting corners with answering that question, but it seems like they're going to stick with Utah Hockey Club this year and then do something next year. Selfishly, I think the jerseys look great with Utah, but as a journalist, figuring out different ways to say Utah Hockey Club instead of just naming the mascot or something is going to be a challenge. So I can't wait for a name, but I agree. I think Bill Armstrong said it too. The Utah across the sweater looks crisp. It's simple. The colors are good. So it's not like an eyesore without a name. So, I don't think it's a huge problem, but it is fun that they're polling the fans and kind of making it a group decision instead of kind of just management.
Who's your favorite Ranger of all time?
Oh, well, no, it's funny, which was full circle. Dominic Moore got hired for the broadcast team. And one of my favorite memories ever growing up, I was at the Garden for Game 6 against the Montreal Canadiens for the Rangers to make it to the Stanley Cup final and obviously lose. But he had the lone goal in that 1-0 win. And I mean, that has to be top 3 or 5 hockey moments for me all time. So it was pretty cool seeing him at Media Day today and, being in a room with him and being in the same profession as him. So he's got to be up there. But wow, that's a hard question. My dog's name was Zook for Matt Zuccarello.
Nice.
So he's up there. I'm a big Ryan Lindgren fan now. I was a big Brandon Dubinsky. So, there's Sean Avery was the first player I met. I'm not going to say he was my favorite, but Rangers have had some good ones. But yeah, the Dominic Moore one, I don't know, feels a little more special now that he's out here as well.
All right, I knew I was older than you, but I'm way older than you because I was at the Canyon of Heroes in '94. I was young, but I was there. I was in high school. So my, I go back to Richter and Leach and Messier and that whole group.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great year. Well, look, it's great to have another Rangers fan out here in Salt Lake. If Falk ever gets grumpy, just get him a Ferta and tell him to take some deep breaths. You guys have a fun room over there, and we're advocates of yours. So, Belle, thank you for the time today, and be well, okay?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, Belle Frazier. She is the new beat writer for the Utah Hockey Club. Get her on Twitter. Let's give her a nice old Salt Lake City, Utah welcome. At Belle Frazier 1 is where you find her. Appreciate her time today. I want to tell you about my good friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. With over 5 million active members, all you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Now, you only need to get 2 picks right. That matters because right now they're giving you 1 free win with 1 Caleb Williams passing yard throughout the month of September, but you better take advantage because it's gone when September ends. So here's what you do. You download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code ESPN700 on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play only $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed with our good friends at Prize Picks. Run your game. 1 day away from week 3 of the NFL, a couple of days away from week 4 of college football. So far for me, I've missed nothing. I've had every game I've wanted, every recap show, every highlight show. I get apps on my channel guide because that's how Dish rolls. Get new equipment, get all the sports, take advantage of the deals right now by dialing 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
This is the best time of year for me and for our company because we get probably the most action because I think that's when people really go, okay, I got to get this stuff lined up right. And Dish has it worked out for you. We've got access to all the games, whether it's college football, pro football or basketball, even hockey. Call us up. We've got some additional offers that Dish has put in our hands. This allows you to even lower your bill even more. Unlike other providers, Dish actually gives the option to opt out of locals. Well, why would you want to opt out? Because that's some of the stuff you really want. Well, it's because you may receive locals for free, and they put an adapter that just plugs that right into the guide. So you have all those channels right there at your fingertips. Actually adds a bunch more channels. You can record, have all the same features. Content is there, and that's what you want. All the content, you want the DVR that automatically finds those games for you, automatically records them. Plus, Dish even auto-records the local channels, which is nice, and it'll auto-hop the commercials. Guys, the list goes on and on of what you get from Dish. I'll tell you this, best promotion out there right now. We've got it. We'll get you the best price. We'll guarantee the price won't change. If you're a cable or a DirecTV customer, I can almost guarantee $60 to $100+ a month savings. Plus, we've got internet providers we can bundle with Dish, and some that you can even get a $200 gift card with no commitment. Call us up, take advantage of this, and let us get you the best system, and we'll throw in dinner at JCW's 424-DISH. It's 801-424-DISH.
All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. The 5 o'clock hour of the show on a Wednesday is all college football. That includes Ian Fitzsimmons from ESPN. Call from Utah, OK State. So edition of the show. Last day of the week without football. Pro football is back tomorrow with some Thursday night action. New England and New York. It's the Patriots and the Jets from MetLife. You can hear that game on our radio station before we say goodnight. I should say after. It'd be weird. After we say goodnight at 6 o'clock tomorrow, you can hear that game on our radio station. A little Thursday night football for you guys. Then the college football weekend actually gets rolling with a really fun Friday night top 25 matchup in Lincoln at Memorial Stadium between Nebraska and Illinois. So get through it one more night tonight. Maybe check out a little playoff. Down the stretch we come to playoff baseball, but RSL, sneaky big match. Looking for something to watch tonight? Maybe head on out there. Go to rsl.com for single game tickets. Dallas is in town to take on Real Salt Lake. That game can be seen on Apple TV, but unfortunately they don't do radio anymore, which is really sad. Is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer?
Yes.
I agree with that. What?
And I'm a hater, just to be clear.
No, I'm aware, but there seems to be a loud contingent that believes that because the Hall of Fame nominees were announced today, he's a first-time nominee. It does feel like Eli's a Hall of Famer, even though there are a lot of people that believe that he shouldn't be in.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, he is a Manning, so he's got that bump, I think, right? You know who Eli Manning is before he was ever a Super Bowl winning quarterback, before he was a college quarterback. You knew who Eli Manning was. So I understand the pushback. I understand that, maybe he was born with a quarterback silver spoon, if you will, but he still went out there and won 2 Super Bowls, including 2 over Tom Brady. He's, I think, top 20 in career passing yards and touchdowns. The guy is done just about everything you want to do as a starting quarterback in the league. I don't know that as an individual, like you just give him, right, his talents, his skill set, and you throw it on any team any given Sunday. I don't know that he's an NFL Hall of Famer, like point blank, like his brother is, like Tom Brady is, like a Dan Marino or one of those, Joe Montana. I don't know if he's one of those guys. He's not one of the all-time greats. But when you bring in the context of his career, how he won those Super Bowls, how he was so vital in winning those Super Bowls down the stretch, I don't really see any way that you could keep him out.
How about the Woj bomb today? Adrian Wojnarowski will no longer be reporting news in a compromised manner based off of his ties to the same agency that represents him and all these other players and coaches. So he has removed that element from his life. He's going to be the general manager of the St. Bonaventure basketball team. Any thoughts on that at all?
Well, like you said, and like you kind of alluded to, the business of news breaking has changed a lot in the few short years that we've been in this space. I'll give credit to Adrian Wojnarowski for being one of the best newsbreakers in the game, right? There's no doubt about it. That's the sacrifices that you make to be one of those guys are crazy to me. You're on your phone constantly. You're kind of giving away any sort of social or family life. So credit to him for that. But as you mentioned, there's also some weird ways that reporting has started to happen around the NBA. In the last year or so, Adrian Wojnarowski, let's be very honest, has been an extension of NBA front offices, an extension of certain cliques in NBA agencies and player kind of friend groups. That's just a reality. That's a reality of what it is. That's where reporting is right now, and he did it as well as anybody, and there's positives and negatives to that, but I think he's going to be really good at St. Bonnie's and doing the GM thing, and that's an interesting conversation too, kind of a new job in college sports that we didn't know or didn't really have a few years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a conversation. Chris Mannix and Woj worked together for about 3 years before Woj went to ESPN, and Chris was in town for Summer League a number of years ago when they were still working together. And this is when Woj was really starting to establish himself as the guy. And he was getting everything. And he was always tweeting. He was always busy. He was always breaking things. And I asked Mannix, I'm like, dude, what's that like to see since you're his coworker? And he's like, he never talks to anybody. He's got 2 phones. He's walking around looking at both phones at all times. He's my coworker. I don't really even know him. All he does is work. So to Porter's point, he put in a lot of work over the years. I do think, and I will always believe, it got a little weird at the end when he was signed by CAA, and suddenly he was breaking a lot of news that wasn't necessarily transactional. It seemed to be information that was supporting certain narratives that were narratives supporting and helping clients that were also his peers at CAA. The Donovan Rudy stuff was really, in my opinion, out of line. And I was bothered by it, and I let him know on social. But good for Woj. Now he might have a life because I believe he does have a family. All right, Porter, let's get out of here. What comes our listeners' way on a Thursday edition of the show?
Yeah, on a Thursday, we'll cover all our bases as we usually do, talking college football, talking pro football, maybe a little soccer as well, as Real Salt Lake is in action tonight. We'll recap Utah State, Utah, and look ahead to the college football weekend that is coming along with Robert Turbin, former NFL running back, former Utah State Aggie. He was on the call up in Logan for that game and really likes what he saw from the Utes. So we'll get Robert Turbin on the show, maybe talk a little NFL with him as well. We'll do a little big hour action. Craig Bowler, Jack Gordon Monson in studio live with you here. We'll go from there. Aaron Roderick, BYU's offensive coordinator, an interesting start for BYU. Their defense looked really, really good up and down for the offense so far. Aaron will give us the latest on that.
All right, good stuff. That'll be a fun Thursday show. With that, we'll say goodnight for this Wednesday. Special thank you. Ian Fitzsimmons, Dalton Wasserman, Stevenson, Sylvester, Blake Murdoch, and Belle Frazier. For any of the sound you may have missed from the show today, you can always check out our website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. It's the ESPN 700 app, and that's available in the App Store for free or the Google Play Store as well. Finally, for what we do in our space for every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page, which is called The Drive with Spence Checketts, and that is available wherever you get your shows. You got a minute tonight, if you're just kind of hanging out of the house, pull up our podcast page on your preferred catcher, give us a rating and a review. If you say nice things, give us all the stars, you will be eternally blessed. That young man is Porter Larson. My name is Spence Checketts, saying goodnight. Enjoy your Wednesday evening. We'll talk to you on a Thursday show. As always, you can find it right here on ESPN 700.